I'm going to call this meeting to order. If everyone could take a seat. Thank you. I believe we start with roll call.
Yes. Commissioner Amundson,
Here.
Franz,
Here.
Bliss,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer. Mayor Clark
Here.
and Chairperson Montague.
Here. Preston, do you need to say anything before we start on the first agenda item?
No, I think we're good to go. No changes to the agenda.
We're just waiting while it loads on my computer. Here we go. I would like to introduce the first item, which is a request for a sketch plan and preliminary plat for subdivision and planned unit development. Lots 1 through 12, block 30, north and adjacent to Frederick Street, east and adjacent to North Laura, and south of and adjacent to Otto Street. Historic residential district, vacant lot, applicant David Bruce, Ridgway Homes, owner Paul Major, Ridgway Homes, and I will turn it over to TJ to present this.
Hi, good evening, everybody. TJ Lubeck, contract planner. And so I also can't really see anyone online, so I might need some help kind of navigating that if needed. So Chair, as you mentioned, what we have in front of the commission tonight is two items, essentially two requests, one for a sketch plan, one for a preliminary plat. You might recall that the parcel was originally approved for 14 residential units through the sketch plan process back in September of 2021. This original subdivision layout included 3 duplexes and 4 fourplexes separated by separated garages off the alley and common areas. Due to logistical issues of maintenance of the common areas, separated garages, the applicant decided to redesign the layout of the project, which necessitated a revised sketch plan to be submitted and reviewed. And so because of that, we have staff has been amenable to combining the sketch and preliminary plats together, since many of the issues that were identified through the previous sketch planning process are still relevant and addressed through this the updated submittal. The applicant is requesting to subdivide the 0.98 acre parcel into 14 residential lots and a 15th lot dedicated to stormwater management. Furthermore, the applicant is requesting to rezone the property to planned unit development to allow a variety of housing types and costs to keep the units affordable for the local workforce. If approved, the density of the project would be 14.3 units per acre. As identified in the 2019 master plan, the property is town core neighborhoods classification on the future land use map. This anticipates a density between 6 and 12 dwelling units per acre and a maximum height of 3 stories. Primary uses include single family homes, duplexes, and smaller multifamily residential uses as well. As I mentioned, the density does not, while the density does exceed the density identified in the master plan land use classification, this density is consistent with the discussions had with the previous sketch plan approved in September for this property. During the September discussions on the sketch plan, Planning Commission cited the transitional nature of the site, the massing and site layout of the homes, and the desire to provide attainable housing as factors to support the increased density. Goals and policies identified in the 2019 master plan which were considered during the review of this project and identified as the project's conformance with the plan are listed in the staff report. While the applicant is requesting a PUD for this property, to address the unique development patterns proposed, the allowed uses must be either allowed by right or conditionally in the underlying zone district. Single-family duplexes and townhomes with 4 or fewer units are all uses by right in the underlying HR district. Additional analysis of the proposed development and the HR district are included in the staff report, and we'll get into a few of those here in my presentation. So first is the dimensional standards. Section 7315A of the Ridgway Municipal Code sets forth the required dimensional standards which shall be met for the various uses allowed within a particular zone district. While the applicant has submitted a PUD request, which does allow variations from those underlying standards, the underlying HR district is the appropriate starting place to determine the impacts the proposal will have on the neighborhood and the adjacent uses. In summary, the applicant is requesting variations from lot width for 1 lot, lot size for 7 lots, minimum front setback distance for 4 lots, and side setback variations for all lots which have shared party walls. Those are the duplexes, so where the units are shared. A table and additional discussion and analysis of each of these is provided in the staff report, along with a map identifying the lots where the 0 setback is being requested. So I don't want to go into all of those at the moment, but they are in the staff report. It's presented up there right now, but we can go into it through discussions if needed. Next, the residential design standards. Residential development in the HR district must meet the residential design standards. This section generally refers to roof structures, sidewalks, landscaping requirements, and variations between adjacent buildings. Based on the information provided, these standards appear to be met with the submittal, with a few exceptions which are addressed in the review comments that were attached to the staff report. One large addition to this updated submittal was 3D renderings and graphics, color renderings of the building elevations. Those renderings were included in the packet material and based on staff's review, appeared to comply with the required variation between adjacent buildings. Next, the landscaping plan. The application included a landscaping plan, which was reviewed against the code's Ridgway Municipal Code. Upon that review, there were some minor deficiencies, which mostly centered around the properly calculating and depicting the requirements of the new, essentially the new landscaping code on that plan. The staff report and enclosed planning comments letter further details the specific standards and calculations which need to be adjusted to comply with the standards. So that would be a condition of approval to just meet those items. As far as access, each of the proposed lots and residential units will have street frontage. Access for lots 4 through 10 and 14 will be provided through the alley. And that's different than the previous submittal where all lots would be accessed through driveways and garages through the alley. The remainder of the lots will have direct driveway access from the adjacent roadways. In the staff report, there's a graphic showing where those parking spots are. Yep, there it is. Thank you, Preston. Leading right into off-street parking requirements, the HR district requires a minimum of 2 off-street parking spaces for single-family and duplex units. The application proposed all lots to meet the minimum requirements with the exception of lots 1 and 11. And in the staff report, those 2 lots were highlighted as red rectangles, indicating that they did not provide the required off-street parking of 2 spaces, where only 1 was provided. while there will be some on-street parking provided, Laura Street is only a half width, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But if the planning commission approves the plan as submitted, they would in essence be approving a reduction in the required off-street parking for those two lots as well. I just want to again make you aware of that element. Moving on to the roadway improvements. As I mentioned, Laura Street is being improved to a temporary condition with only half width. And the reason there is that the property to the west is not part of this application, and there's only a half width right of way dedicated currently. So we've tried to find a temporary solution until such time that property to the west it becomes developed. Staff is amenable and supportive of the temporary and interim solution as well. Second that I want to bring to your attention is Frederick Street. Frederick Street is not being proposed to be fully connected to Cora Street in this plan. So there's just a gap between the connection. Again, just wanted to bring that to your attention. I believe there's some surface treatment, but not full connectivity there, whereas Otto is fully connected. Moving on to utilities, there does appear to be adequate supply and capacity in both the water treatment and sanitary sewer treatment systems to serve the proposed 14 units. So that's not a concern. And while water and sewer mains services are provided in the area, there are currently no water or sewer main lines directly adjacent to the property. These utilities will need to be extended to serve the project. The alignments, both horizontal and vertical, since plan and profile, have been provided in the preliminary plan sets and have been reviewed by town staff. The applicant is proposing that lot 15, which is on the northeast corner of the project, to be dedicated to the town to manage stormwater. While this infrastructure is needed to capture and manage stormwater on the site, the town does not typically accept these types of facilities, nor these types of maintenance responsibilities. Staff is not supportive of accepting these facilities and would like the applicant to remain responsible for ownership and maintenance of this facility. So with that, that's generally the presentation. Couple of logistical items though, is that first, the applicant has submitted the hearing application, associated fees, and all other requirements for the public hearing to the town. And the property has been posted and properly noticed in accordance with the Ridgway Municipal Code requirements. As of draft in the staff report, no public comment either for or against the request have been received. And with that, we would just conclude that we would need, moving forward, two separate motions. You can discuss both of these applications together, but we would need two separate motions, one for the sketch plan and one for the preliminary plat and PUD. So with that, upon review of the application against applicable town standards, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the Yellow Brick Lane sketch plan with the following condition. One, the preliminary plat and PUD plan for the Yellow Brick Lane be approved by the town council and all conditions of such approval be met. And so that's for the sketch plan. One condition is outlined in the staff report. And then for the preliminary plat and PUD plan, staff again recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the preliminary plat, preliminary PUD plan application to the town council with the following condition. One, the applicant shall address all outstanding planning and engineering comments identified in the review comment letters attached to the staff report to the satisfaction of town staff prior to the application being scheduled for consideration at the town council. So we're looking at them both kind of separately, jointly, and that's why we're tying them together in that way. that if one is approved or one is not approved, neither of them are. So that way we don't get into a situation where one might be approved and the other isn't. So in essence, the comment letters that are attached, once we get those approved through staff, both would be then kind of moving forward approved, or not, sorry, not approved, move forward to town council. So with that, I think I'm done with my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission might have. And I know the applicants are here this evening as well.
Do either of you have any questions for TJ?
I don't.
Not at this moment.
Do any of our commissioners on Zoom have questions for TJ right now?
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you. This is Thomas Emelson. Quick question, TJ. I heard you say lot 15, which is designated as a detention basin of some sort for drainage, that you don't want them to proceed with that. What do you think will happen with that space there? Do you have any idea, or is that up to the applicant, I guess?
I don't know, and I'm hoping that the applicant might be able to present a little bit more on that item in their presentation.
Okay.
Those are things that would be under the purview of like an HOA or a metro district.
Okay. The other last question I had, at least right now, it's hard for me to look at the drawings and see it. What is considered common element spaces? Because there was some reference to that earlier. Maybe that's been completely eliminated and now everything is just individual lots. Can you maybe clarify on that for me?
Sure. Yes, those common element areas have been removed from this second updated submittal. So that is no longer applicable.
Okay, thank you.
And TJ, this is Bill Lisk. I have a similar question to lot 15, at whether that it is now going to be construed as a common element, et cetera. But as you said, perhaps the applicant can clarify that for us.
We're waiting to hear from the applicant on that. I don't think TJ can answer this question.
I'll provide a little bit more clarity because in the plan, at least the planning comments, we're recommending a few items associated with that lot and parcel. And those are for a real reason. If something's called a lot, that means it's buildable. We want to make sure that it's not buildable in the future. So put some constraints on it.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, as far as, who's going to own it, how it's going to be maintained, whether or not it's going to be a quote unquote amenity for the residents, and how it's functioning, I would defer to the applicant on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other preliminary questions? Okay, we're going to turn it over to the applicant.
Should I go here?
Yeah.
Feels very formal. Thanks, TJ and Preston and the Planning Commission. I know Paul Major presented to you guys last month about our updated timeline and this change of the sketch plan idea to what we believe is a really much improved design for this site. And it's been a really quick turnaround with staff to get back here just 1 month later. So very grateful for that effort from all of staff to be in front of you today. And also congratulations to the town on House Bill 1271 funding, which is a really huge news about $750,000 of grant funding from the Department of Local Affairs. So that's extraordinary. I put some slides together that really focus more on the layout of the neighborhood and the design, which hopefully will give some backing to these nuances and the dimensional requirements that we're requesting in the PUD. And then we'll get through and hopefully at the end, stop at the discussion points, including lot 15 and some other things that are worthy of our time to talk about. So I'll try to breeze through these images pretty quick. Last time I was in front of you guys was September. So just to remind you that my name is David. I'm working for an organization called Rural Homes LLC. We're building an affordable housing unit project in Norwood, Colorado, 24 units. And we're really trying to target homes that are affordable to the workforce. So between 60 to 120% of Uray County's area median income. And given some assumptions on mortgage rates, we're looking at home values between 250,000 to 450,000, which is a challenge right now with how much demand there is for construction and sort of all the costs associated with the building environment right now. But this is our sort of mission as an organization. Next slide, please, Preston. The first thing I wanted to show you is just sort of a rough illustration of what we're proposing for this development. I do want to underscore that I've heard some comments in the past, and one actually today, citizen of Ridgway, that had some concerns and questions about the name of this subdivision, Yellow Brick Lane Townhomes. I want to note that that was actually a request from the individual that contributed this parcel for the project, but I don't think that we should solidify that that's the name of the subdivision. Maybe there's a way to make it more of a community process with suggestions and then sort of a vote. But I know that was a comment. I want to raise it now. We can add that to our discussion. So the project is 14 units. They all share a party wall. So these are townhomes where there's a joint wall between units that is on a lot line. We're building 4 2-bedroom, 2 bathrooms, and the remaining 10 are 3-bedroom, 3 bathrooms. 6 of 14 have garages accessed through the alley. And what we've done is remove all the common elements, which were internal walkways, which were the detention pond, as well as a mirror image, potentially playground space. It became very complicated without an HOA to maintain those common elements. So this new proposal gets rid of those and has turned the 4plexes into duplexes. Next image. Here is an illustration of the elevation on North Laura Street. So let's see, there's 8 homes that have front porches onto North Laura. And I think that is one of the really great new additions to the latest scheme, that Laura, with that half alley, becomes sort of a really nice pedestrian street with front porches and hopefully a community feel. Next slides just run you very quickly through the units that we are proposing to build. This is an example of 2 different units that are both 3 bedrooms. One is 1,600 square feet that you see on the right. The right block is the first floor, the left block is the second floor. These are super high quality homes that are manufactured by Fading West Development, a new modular homes factory in Buena Vista. So it's local Colorado company. And these are examples of what would be at that higher income range, 100 to 120% of area median income for this project. The next 2 floor plans are lower, 60 to 80. The 2-bedroom on the left and that same 3-bedroom on the right. Next image, please. Just a rendering of what these units look like. So this is an example of the corner of North Laura and Frederick, or the mirror image of this would be the corner of Otto in North Laura. So really trying to, create a high quality, well-designed neighborhood for the workforce. Here's some shots of homes being produced as we speak in Buena Vista. And what is incredible about this process is it really reduces the on-site construction time, which is costly in both of time and money. On the right are these homes being craned together. So hopefully sometime in November or December, we'll have that similar image down the street. The next is the overall site plan done by our landscape architect. So there are some land use tables that we need to get back to staff for review, but just to zoom back out and show you the sort of overall layout where we have parking for most of the units, access off the alley. Units 1, 2, and 3 are accessed from Frederick Street or Laura Street, and it's the same on that mirror image. Just to run through the timeline very quickly, we hope to, by mid-June, be in front of town council. And this is, of course, all contingent and all hypothetical, but that could enable a construction start on water, sewer, roads by mid-July, potentially foundations in October. There's an important question of sequencing that we need to talk about either as a commission or just with staff based off getting a building permit before final plat is approved, which would require civil improvements to be completed because we're in this factory slot of having homes delivered potentially in November. And then this is such a quick process, given the modular approach, that it is feasible to have some residents moving in by the end of this year. Finally, to discussion points, I think I'll start with this question of lot 15 since it's been raised. Lot 15, we're going to change from the nomenclature of lot to tract, probably tract A. It is a detention pond. It will be natural grasses intended to slow down the flow of water off the site that would negatively impact all the downstream homeowners, as well as sort of remove sediment from runoff before it flows into the Uncompahgre. So that detention pond is a EPA standard and adds benefit to our rivershed. It would look like a shallow depression with grasses. And in speaking with our civil engineer, Rob Harries from Goff, it would be a minimal maintenance, potentially once a year, making sure the drain is not clogged. So our ask is that that tract would be dedicated to the town. There wouldn't be any direct benefit to the homeowners of this project, really just sort of a open field. On that same point, we're really trying to avoid from the get-go in designing this project of implementing a homeowners association. We know that there are real costs to establishing an HOA, including sort of the upfront cost of legally forming such a thing, and then year after year implications. What we're trying to do is not only build homes that are affordable on purchase, but have a low operational cost over the lifespan of this project. So we're doing that both with energy use, but also trying to avoid HOA fees, for example. HOAs also attract potential lawsuits, and we don't want the beneficiaries of the residents of this project to have to deal with legal issues down the road. So that's another thing to discuss. I mentioned this sequencing question. Perhaps that's more appropriate for another venue. I think that this is potentially a model for Colorado as a way that a town and a nonprofit developer can partner and build affordable housing. So in that, we want to request that there are concessions, waivers on sewer and water tap fees, as well as permitting fees and review fees. And then along those lines, in order to reduce the upfront, the day one cost to sell these homes to homeowners, I think there are certain concessions that we could discuss that would help make these homes more affordable, such as not paving asphalt on the right of ways and building Frederick Street to the alley rather than all the way to Cora. As you well know, the site doesn't have much infrastructure that directly services it. And so there is a very high cost of building all that infrastructure. What we can responsibly save will go right to the homeowners. And the last slide is just sort of an overview of the extent of civil improvements required to make this developable, just as a sort of reminder. I'm joined here today by Paul Major. So if there's any questions that we'll tag team, that's That's him in the blue over there. So
Thank you. I'm going to open it to questions from the commissioners who are present, and then we will go to the commissioners on Zoom. Anything?
Yeah, I have some questions. The stormwater. So lot 15 was supposed to manage the stormwater, or how is the stormwater being directed in there?
it's, so our engineers have directed, our engineers have controlled the water flow to concentrate in that area. There's conveyance through the alley, as well as the site naturally drains from the southwest to the northeast, so sort of on this diagonal from the top left to the bottom right. So the idea is that all this water that would usually on the undisturbed site sort of soak into the soil and recharge groundwater, or just sort of slow down the flow. But now that we have driveways and roofs, the water is going to move faster and sort of concentrate in certain areas. And so the idea is that it's all brought to this tract, which, you know, essentially is a small depression in the ground with grasses, and their sediments that are picked up from that conveyance would sort of just get maintained in that area. And then the water would slowly recharge into the stormwater system that is currently on Cora from an extension of these pipes, and then go into the Uncompahgre in a state that is acceptable to EPA standards with the Clean Water Act, I believe. So this is something that's required of subdivisions. And we're trying to find a way to not have sort of detach that as a system, which, you know, provides benefit to the watershed, detach that from home ownership of all the other lots 1 through 14.
So is, I know there's a storm ditch down at Otto and Flora. Why would the water not be directed into that?
I know our civil engineers looked at that question, and there was sort of a bit of an uphill bump to bring it over to that other side, given the topography of the site comes down in this diagonal from the intersection of Frederick and Laura to the other side of Otto. So the engineer looked at both strategies in conversation with Joanne, the town's engineer, and came to recommend this one. I'm personally not a civil engineer, and I'm happy to have him sort of write his decision-making in a letter to the town.
Why just, since we don't have staff to take care of something like that?
Yeah, I think the key is that this would probably be a pretty low maintenance issue. Once a year, if that, going to make sure that, you know, dead grasses haven't accumulated on that drain inlet, and sort of just clearing that off. And I think this is where developing the landscape plan with our landscape architects to sort of say, hey, what is a natural planting solution that would align with these town goals of being low maintenance, be a great next step as we move towards a building permit.
And then I wanted to kind of ask about Frederick Street. I know you guys said that you weren't going to go all the way through to Cora, but in order to support, would traffic still go through Frederick Street right there to Cora? Are they allowed, or is that a driveway?
Well, I think where we were going with that, so right now, it seems like it's traveled, but it's grass. And there's a bit of gravel there now, but it's sort of not designed or constructed as a functioning town street.
Right.
Bringing Frederick Street to the alley would essentially serve these units. They're parking for lot 4 through to lot 14, and then they can exit out through Otto. So I think what we're presenting is that, you know, this horseshoe of infrastructure that we need to build comes at pretty immense cost. And so we're just trying to begin the conversation to see what the town might be willing to consider to try to bring that cost down, since every dollar we spend on the project goes to the sale price of the homes. Of course, minus subsidies that we're getting.
Okay, and you guys mentioned that these are all deed restricted.
They're all deed restricted units.
Okay, and one more question for you. Are you guys planning to have like ground cover in our landscaping regulations? We require 20% at least.
Yeah, Preston, can you go back to the landscape plan, which I think is 2 up? What we had the landscape architect focus on was really sort of this space between the right of way and the front porches. So that and the area in white will be fenced and really up to the homeowner to decide what they want to do with that space, as backyard space, you know, whether it's a garden or a lawn. So what we're trying to think about here is, you know, what is a responsible investment of landscaping, of something that will hopefully last a long time, so that a homeowner who buys lot 5, for example, doesn't just tear up what we put in there. So one thing that staff has asked us to do is overlay a land use table that compares code to what we're proposing here. I don't have those figures yet, but we will soon, and drive that forward. But that was the reasoning between the white space and then the gray space. It's like some should be up to the eventual purchaser of that unit.
Those are my questions so far.
Thank you. A question about TJ, you had mentioned that the partial Frederick might be some kind of surface treatment. Can you say a bit more about that in terms of whether that would be actually usable, that road?
Sure, and it was based on Preston, if you wouldn't mind. I think there's the last slide, kind of that overall, yeah. And so you can see that all the shaded areas appear to be some type of a treatment, and I think that's what that comment was based on.
Okay.
It's hard to tell exactly where it ends and what's being done there. So I might ask the applicant to clarify what treatment to what extent, maybe pointing on that map
Yeah.
there.
Totally. So we're in the process of getting bids on the horizontal improvements from different civil contractors. And the incremental cost of adding asphalt is significant. So I think a wiser use of funding could be to sort of make all this gray area gravel and then extend Frederick. What I was saying to cut costs in our original sketch plan proposal was, what is the benefit to these homeowners and what extent of infrastructure do we have to build to make this all work as an addition to the town? And, you know, that's up to here, thinking that homeowners would either access through Auto Street or from Laura down to Frederick and then come into here. Because all these units are functioning because it exists given the conditions of the site now. Is that an adequate response, CJ?
And then can you point out what that, there's some notes on Frederick at the south end of the, sorry.
There's a proposed culvert. There's currently a ditch here. And, you know, I think a bit of Cora that starts to bleed into the Frederick right of way.
So then it would be functionally connected. That would be the intent.
Yep.
That was the inconsistencies through some of the drawings that I saw.
So a little bit confused on that, and I'll just hit it since we're on it. I thought that you said you weren't going to go through.
I think that's we are asking the town to consider what extent of infrastructure you are comfortable to endorse this project with, knowing that every increase in our horizontal costs are going to go to the price of these homes.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me as the applicant trying to do right by the town and do right by the project, those are sort of the two open questions. One is, are you okay with gravel roads here or stopping Frederick Street at the alley? Or both, you know. So we're applying for grants, but another way to make these homes more affordable is seeing what could be possible from an infrastructure improvement.
That makes
So-
sense. Thank you.
If I may just clarify, hopefully a little bit on that, that came from the direction from staff. The original request was, if you will, not meeting the minimum standards of the town. Staff requested to design and submit a plan that meets the minimum standards, and then ask for variations or deviations from those standards. And so that, while it's not necessarily the purview of the planning commission to be able to make that type of a policy decision, we want that to be part of your deliberation and discussion, and hopefully a recommendation going to town council is so associated with how to make sure that there's adequate infrastructure to meet the needs of not only this project, but also the surrounding area.
Okay.
So just, so I'm not confused, if you do go through Frederick Street and put gravel on there, you would put a culvert in?
Yeah, because
They would have to.
there's currently this
Yeah.
open ditch,
Yeah.
as I recall, and
So no matter what treatment is applied to eastern part of Frederick there, it would need to meet the town's stormwater standards, so a culvert or some sort of treatment there would be necessary.
Okay,
So just to piggyback on what TJ was saying, we asked the applicant to depict as clearly as possible what it would take to engineer this development according to town standards, and then depict what they're looking to do based on what would work financially for their project, so that the cost passed on to homeowners would be so high. So that's what David's trying to portray here is, naturally, as the applicant, they're looking for some concessions. The eastern part of Frederick Street, in my opinion, as a town manager, is a low-hanging fruit type concession for planning commission, ultimately town council to consider, for either not addressing at all, or addressing with a different type of treatment. Now, we heard at the sketch plan hearing back in September from a few of you that there's interest in seeing that that undeveloped section of right of way further developed. And we totally understand that from the staff level. Now's the point where we really need to dig in and figure out what's going to work for everybody, the happy medium. Does that make sense?
So can you hear, this is Russ Meyer. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Russ.
Yeah, just kind of a wild idea I had earlier today. I know we've got this development going on Laura. I may have missed it, but I'm not real sure exactly how we're going to navigate a one-lane right-of-way there. And I don't know if staff or anybody else on the council or anybody else in the audience may have any ideas if there's really any chance that we're ever going to be able to acquire the other half of that right of way. And if we're not able to, I had the idea, what if we made that a green space with like a bike trail and a walking trail, and they could go ahead and do the development on Frederick to put it all the way through to Cora. Just bouncing that off the crowd to see if there's any input or reaction.
Can I add something?
Just state your name.
Yeah, this is John Clark.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Just in response to Russ's comment, I definitely think that we'll eventually be able to get the other half of Laura Street. Maybe I'm just being optimistic because I don't have a crystal ball, and there's no way I can guarantee that. But it's my belief that not only will we eventually get it through some negotiations with the landowner, but that we really need it to complete the neighborhood connections in that area, as well as the connection to the last phase of the industrial park. So while that's an interesting idea, I think, in my view, I think we really need to get all of Laura developed eventually. And I also, just while we're talking about it, I think we need to complete Frederick Street and Auto Street as well. Personally, I think there's no reason for us to require that they be paved at this point, considering there's no other pavement in the area other than that little bit of auto back towards the industrial park. And that my sort of creative suggestion would be that we, the problem, based on what David's been talking about the town taking part and helping out this development, minimize its cost, is that, the town isn't in the business of developing property in town. And if we're spending tax dollars to help individual developers, we get into some pretty murky territory, I think. But one creative potential is to do some in-kind work. In other words, use some of the town staff and town equipment to help build some of the gravel roads around the property. That's just my 2 bits on that.
Excuse me, this is Tom Simelson. Hey, John, do you know, at what point, or maybe Preston, what is the town's responsibility to improve or maintain these rights of way? I would think that even if a development were to go in here, that most of that would fall on town responsibility, but I have no idea how that functions.
Well, once they're developed, yeah, it's our job to maintain them, but it's not our job to develop them in the first place if they're undeveloped.
I'm sorry, but even if it's are these roads actually,
They're rights of way.
They're already platted in there, shall we say? They're already part of a legal document that says they're there. So yeah. I'm kind of curious, but the town doesn't need to improve them.
Well,
I think the town needs to maintain them once they're improved, if that's my understanding, correct?
Okay.
Thomas, if I can, then please, this is Preston. To answer your question, once they are developed and publicly dedicated, yes, the town maintains those streets, just as we do all of the streets, publicly dedicated streets. I guess that was the first. What was your second question on that, Thomas?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was maybe I only had one, but that was basically, it was just to understand, what the responsibility of the town is. So what I'm hearing is that if no one were to do anything there, the town would leave it as is. Once they were to get this project approved and install it, it would be up to them to actually put in the roads and the infrastructure. But after that, then the town is responsible for maintaining it.
Correct.
Right.
Thank you.
And all of those rights of way, save for the half of Lower Street that belongs to the Wolves still, are already dedicated town rights of way.
Correct. All right. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, if I may, one last thing. Russ, appreciate the idea. I just wanted to jump in because I know TJ would say this if I didn't, but the town code requires that every parcel be adjacent to a publicly dedicated street. And if Laura Street was made a green belt or something of the sort, then a number of those parcels would be adjacent to a publicly dedicated street. So that's something to take into consideration. It would be a pretty big deviation from the code. Am I on the right track?
Right. That's correct.
Do you have more questions?
I had a question about the grant for infrastructure. Was that a specific grant for this project, or was it a town grant?
So
generally speaking, for infrastructure,
it was not a general grant just to apply to anything. It was specific to this project. Okay. So what Jennifer's referring to is House Bill 1271, the Affordable Housing Strategies grant program through the Department of Local Affairs, and the town was recently awarded $750,000 to help support the infrastructure being required for this project. Okay. So.
Okay, back to Zoom. Do other commissioners have more questions at the moment before I open it to public comment?
It's a minor point. This is John Clark again. Relatively minor point, but I don't want to forget mentioning it. The landscape plan is very elaborate, and I appreciate that the amount of time and thought that went into it. But it's always my job as somebody who's lived here a really long time to question some of the plant choices that these landscape architects always come up with. It's always interesting to me that it appears that even though, our climate has changed, it's not nearly as cold as it used to be. There's still, I really don't think a pin oak is going to live in our climate. So I would just urge your landscape architect to go back to the drawing board, talk to maybe the extension service Montrose, and make sure that at the very least that pin oak can maybe be replaced with something else. I'm also unsure about what a peach leaf willow is, but if it's anything like a globe willow, there's absolutely no way it would survive here. We've had weeping willows survive here, but we have a really tricky climate that gets colder than most surrounding areas in the winter. So I just throw that out as an aside, that look closely at those big tree species that have been spec'd for the project. Thank you.
John, I appreciate those comments, and I'd love to get some of your red lines. But I shared the landscape plan more to say that this is our direction and concept, and like the name of the project and infrastructure, that the planting choices also need to be workshopped slightly. Luckily, we have some time this summer to do that. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, appreciate that.
I have one final question about the roads. Would sidewalks be considered a part of the development of the roads? If it was gravel,
We've
is that on there?
designed concrete sidewalks, which include gutter, curb, and sidewalk, which is this 5-foot section, 6 foot if you include the gutter that wraps horseshoe, and then
Right.
ends on the east end of the alley. And just to chime in, based off the sort of estimating and bidding I've seen so far, there is a significant incremental cost of asphalt. And I think in terms of finding the extent and scope that makes sense, doing this whole gray area, this whole extent, but finishing it a surface treatment of gravel, I think would be sort of the most responsible way forward in terms of achieving both these goals of adding to the street network, but also keeping the prices down.
I guess I was just referring to Frederick Street and Auto Street. I couldn't quite see it.
Yeah, it's
continued down all the way.
No,
It would stop at the alley.
Yeah, we would stop sidewalk here and then cover the whole perimeter of our project and stop it again here.
Okay.
I'm prepared to open it to public comment, and we can come back to the commissioners for additional discussion and questions. Does that work for everyone?
Yep.
All right, opening for public comment. Please walk up to the podium, state your name. Do we need to know where people live also? And then speak to your.
Hi,
Hi.
Eric Johnson, 490 North Cora. First thing I want to do is really say is that I'm in total favor of this project. I mean, I think we've been searching for affordable housing solutions in Ridgway for a long, long time. And I think this is, I think this is one of them. I think it makes a lot of sense. I only have a couple of concerns about the project in general, and the biggest one is probably traffic flow issues. And I think as I was reading through the packet where it was presented that Frederick Street potentially wouldn't go through, I think that would be a big mistake. I think that would dump a lot of the traffic directly onto Cora Street, which is already gets a fairly heavy traffic load, from school traffic and misguided people trying to find their way into the light industrial park. And one of the things I would request is, as that section of Cora is getting developed, is that some permanent traffic calming device be put in there. And I'm fine with gravel roads for now. I mean, I'd love to see pavement, but I understand the cost issues. I know asphalt's ridiculously expensive, and it's going to get even more so over the next year or two probably. But some sort of permanent traffic calming device on that stretch of Otto, as well as the current paved stretch of Otto, I think really needs to be done to slow some stuff down. You know, currently there's a three-way stop at Otto and Cora, and I even watched one of our elected officials go blowing through the stop sign the other night as well. And so, you know, that just stuff needs to slow down. There's a lot of kids in that area. There's going to be more there soon. And particularly as that development goes through, we really need to make sure that traffic is not blowing through there. And I think Frederick has to go through to help offset some of that load coming through there. Glasses, can't read my own handwriting. And I also noticed in the staff report that there was some reduction of the alley from 20 feet to 16 feet. And I was just wondering what the reasoning on that was.
I can speak to the alley. So as you know, the land was donated to the project and the existing plat had a 16-foot wide alley.
Okay.
And so what we're doing is we're talking about lot 15 in the stormwater conveyance. We've got a drive lane and then basically a space that is shaped to move that water into this detention pond.
But with that drive lane, will two cars be able to pass?
No,
Okay.
they wouldn't. To make two driving lanes, two 10-foot driving lanes, plus that stormwater conveyance, it would be about a 26-foot wide alley section,
Okay.
which takes away the off-street parking for this unit and this unit. You know, we can make the backyards smaller and tighter, but you know, this is really designed with the ambition of trying to get all the load of the parking requirements to off-street, which has this unintended consequence of, you know, smaller.
Okay. I was just curious as to what the reason behind that was. And then in terms of the stormwater drainage, you know, you've talked about this detention pond in track 15. And I think just it's important to remember historically this lot in past years when Ridgway was a little wetter was pretty much a swamp. And a lot of water came down and would come down into the existing ditch that runs along Cora Street and exit out. Currently, there's a stormwater drain right on the corner of, well, it's not on the corner exactly, it's on Otto Street, probably 30 feet off of Cora. And again, it seems like it would be easy enough to tie your drainage into that because we're not looking at a lot of distance. You know what I'm talking about?
So first, civil engineering based in Durango has a 40-page stormwater report that I'd be happy to distribute. I actually think it's part of the Planning and Zoning Commission application. So everything will be overlap graded, as I said, to basically hold it here. This inlet comes across Otto and then connects to the existing storm drain.
Okay.
So
when you mentioned that earlier, I was a little unclear as to how you were describing it.
it's this orange line that is just slightly cropped.
And then my other question is, who's managing the deed restrictions on these?
Paul's going to speak to that. He's behind
Yeah,
you.
do you want me to talk into the mic or?
I pause.
So the deed restrictions are going to be managed by a housing authority.
Okay.
So we have not selected that housing authority yet. We've basically designed the legal documents as a covenant that goes with the land and then with the home ownership, and then a guideline. In the case of Norwood, it's going to be the San Miguel County Regional Housing Authority. We're talking to the Montrose Regional Housing Authority about managing these. They're managing the space to create deed restrictions.
Okay. So an existing
Using
housing.
existing.
Okay, thank you. And then my last thing, and I'll get down, in terms of the sidewalks, I think it's great to have a sidewalk. and I don't know whether this is necessarily for you guys as the developer, or maybe the town to figure out a way, but if you stop that sidewalk right there, then there's this weird little stretch of sidewalk that runs on the north side of Otto Street from Cora going west. And you would leave this sort of funky little gap in there. And it would really be nice if somehow, I mean, you'd have a crosswalk there, but it would at least connect that through somehow.
As I understand it, there's a series of civil improvement applications related to the industrial park and the
Right.
second phase. And I believe they would be required to extend the existing sidewalk on Auto all the way up on the north side of the street.
But just even in the short term, it would be nice to be able to crosswalk and come over and catch that sidewalk rather than having people walking down the street. Anyway, that's just a thought. I'm not pushing that as a big issue. But it's something the town, I think, should look at moving forward. So thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
My name is Joe Woodick and I live at 720 Lands End. What are your costs per square foot or your finished cost per square foot per unit?
There's a number of pieces to this. There's basically all of our entitlements costs, get the permits.
Yeah, what are with all to the finished as a walk?
225, 230.
So you're saying, so your three bedroom homes are costing 440,000? Was it 450?
What I'm
Because
happy to
divide
make
that up. I mean, but you're looking, was it 1,800 feet divided by 400 and something?
What is the objective of your question? Because I'll try to
Well,
help
I'm
you
just
get
trying to
the
figure out when you're, question for you, when you're saying a high quality home, I'm a taxpayer. So when you're saying a high quality home, I'm a general contractor, 43 years. When I'm
Yes.
If we could just make sure that public comments are directed to the planning commission,
planning
not
commission.
having
Okay.
sidebar conversations.
Mike, the reason why I'm asking that when this is a high quality home, I've never seen a manufactured home that I would consider high quality. So has anybody done and I'm not asking, so maybe it's a rhetorical question, but has anybody done an inspection on the company that's manufacturing these products? When it's going to be a community project like that, and you're going to pick up some costs to it, it would be nice to know the transparency of this. What are they paying for that? If we're going to, as taxpayers, pick up that cost, my hope would be that somebody would look into that to make sure that there's transparencies on the cost. A manufacturer's home, pretty much anybody can come in and set that. You need a foundation, and the rest of it's pretty easy to do. But if the community is going to agree to that, I think there should be some transparency on what the cost of that is, or if you can put that out to bid. I know I would love if the town, when I was building, and would come up and pick up part of my cost so that I can make it more affordable. So if that's the case, there needs to be some transparency. But on a manufactured home, 220 to 250 bucks a foot seems quite steep to me. But that's my comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think one key to this is these aren't manufactured homes. These are built in the factory. These are built in the factory to expedite a lot of the time and costs of on-site construction, which we know is hard in this area right now, given the labor market is essentially catering to a much higher end product. These are framed with engineered timber, LSLs, LVLs. So there's sort of incredible tolerances that will avoid creep over time. The factories in Buena Vista, I talk with them just about every day. I'd be more than happy to arrange a trip with TJ Preston, commissioners, town council to go and see these being manufactured. I think that there is a sort of next evolution of homes. These aren't trailers. These aren't manufactured homes. These are built in a factory setting where you can control the labor, you can control all your material inputs. They get trucked over and craned into place. So we're building these pretty quickly. We're talking about potentially homeowners in December.
Well,
So
and Paul mentioned in his presentation last month that if we wanted to go to the factory and check it out and ask them some questions, we were welcome to do that. So that might be a worthwhile trip to get some of those questions answered.
And Madam Chair, if I may, Mayor Mayor Clark actually took a visit just a couple weeks ago, wanted to throw that out, but we do have a couple more hands raised on Zoom.
Okay,
Mayor, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say just that myself, President, thanks. I did manage to take a tour of the factory about 2 weeks ago and was totally impressed. These aren't like your typical double wide modular homes. These are you won't. I think you really won't believe what they look like when you see them. It's a state-of-the-art facility where they're manufacturing them, and they're cutting costs by being inside for the entire process and having a very elaborate process that has different teams doing different parts of the process. And these giant sections that they're building, they actually move them around on compressed air. It's state of the art. There's no question about it. And I really believe it's kind of the future of workforce housing in areas where the climate isn't always amenable to construction year round. So I can share some pictures later.
thanks, John. Some more public comment on Zoom, did you say, Preston?
Yeah, there's a.
You want to call on people, or how do you want to do it?
Let's go in order based on hands raised. So 1661 employee has their hand raised.
Does anyone think that that's their ID?
Hello, this is, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
If you state your name and your address.
This is Julia Vollendorf at 660 Otto Street. So we are directly adjacent on the northeast corner. Want to first state that we are very in favor of this project and having affordable housing and year-round neighbors in our neighborhood, and appreciate this reconfiguring with the reallocation of some of the parking off the alley. That was a nice thing to see in this new version of the sketch plan. I would like to reiterate kind of what Eric Johnson was saying, just about developing and completing all possible roadway access around this block to alleviate congestion and traffic flow from all flowing in, only certain improved roadways. With the 14 unit density, which was already a variance granted for higher density residential block in this area, that will be the highest density block in the neighborhood, and therefore the highest density of cars, especially with, a lot of 3 bedrooms and whatnot, which is great. But that will be a lot of vehicles, and having all the roadways, completed for access and traffic flow is definitely, something we would like to see. And then just a note on that concerns over that track 15 drainage. One note that as far as town maintenance, the drain that is already on Otto Street near Cora, that grate does periodically need to be cleared, and the town currently does that. Some spring storms, for example, that grate gets clogged up and the water starts to back up onto Otto Street, and the digger comes over from the maintenance barn and digs out that grate in just a few minutes, and that does regularly happen. So just as far as how much maintenance is, if that is a similar thing they were speaking to, it does not seem to currently be a huge situation that needs to happen on the existing grate. We've lived here almost 11 years, and it's not something that happens frequently as far as clearing, if that's the same thing. And I think that's all we have to contribute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Elizabeth has her hand raised.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was wondering what your planners
1 second.
estimate. What's up?
Name and address, please.
Oh, my name is Elizabeth Keene and I live outside of the town of Ridgway.
Okay.
And I was wondering what your planners estimate for the number of trips per day per unit will be.
I don't know that they've done that estimate, but I'll let TJ speak to that.
Generally speaking, the industry standard is about 9 to 10 trips per dwelling unit. So about 115.
40.
Yeah.
That seems
So-
really high to me. I live in that neighborhood and drive once or twice a week.
Well,
Apparently,
it's not high at all because they figure in the FedEx man and the school bus and
correct. It's everything.
and service people and that kind of thing. Has anybody done an environmental impact study on this project?
I just want to contribute that in terms of environmental impacts, having an affordable housing project at high density in the historic residential and town core neighborhood is a really good thing. A lot of affordable housing projects happen sort of in the periphery and the outskirts of towns and cities where you have to drive, or biking distance from both schools, or walking distance from Main Street and the parks. So yes, of course, these are homes that will need to be serviced and will be trips surrounding that, but having this in the center of Ridgway is ultimately a really good thing for a full-time workforce neighborhood.
So is that the extent of your environmental impact study? Or your tip study?
I don't know that one's
It's
required.
not,
Point of order, David. We need to continue with the public comment portion. Appreciate the remarks, so go ahead.
If I may, Chair, I think the way we want to handle public comment is to hear the public comment, write down the concerns, and then use the chair and the planning commission can ask staff or whomever to address those concerns after.
Okay,
Just that way we don't get into discussion on the.
so we don't need to answer the questions right
Correct,
now.
and if needed, if there are some concerns of the planning commission that we're not able to address adequately, there are options to address them down the road as well. So, and I'm not trying to dissuade people from making comments or brushing comments aside.
I
just a
appreciate your
way
point of
to
order.
keep order and flow of the meeting.
Elizabeth, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I do. I was wondering if any of you have considered our changing climate and the drought that seems to be happening across the West.
Are there any other questions?
Is there an answer to that?
I don't need to answer questions at the meeting is what TJ just said.
Well, as staff, Elizabeth, do you mind elaborating on the question? Are you talking about water supply? Are you talking about landscape regulations or landscape plan as it applies to the property? Or is there some other element you're referring to?
Water supply.
Well, I'll just go ahead and talk to that. The town retained a consultant last year to do an investigation into the town's water supply and overall water portfolio as it relates to this level of growth and development that we didn't anticipate 3-4 years ago, or however long it's been. And the results of that study also incorporate climate change modeling and some other assumptions, the results of which are on the town's website. In the end, I don't want to mischaracterize kind of, a very executive summary of those results, but the results did indicate that the town's water supply is in good order through, I think, 2050, provided that the town does some things to button up the water distribution infrastructure coming from the head gate down to Lake O, Town's Reservoir, and some elements beyond that too. So sorry to ramble, but at the end of the day, based on my understanding, water supply is in good order and can accommodate this 14-unit development. Does that make sense?
No. I don't think any of us can plan on water supply being in good order. I think we're seeing dire environmental concerns because of the nonstop development that has occurred in this state, in this area. And that's why my question about the number of cars that you're going to be funneling onto the roads, going to Montrose, going to Telluride, going to wherever. And I just don't think that anything's for sure anymore.
Thank you. Is there another person with questions?
Nina has her hand up.
Nina, could you state your name, your address, please?
Yes, Nina Hunter, and I'm at 485 North Cora. And I'm in front of Julia, who spoke earlier, and across from Eric. And I have a question and just a couple comments. So I'll start with a question. If the roads are not going to be paved now and left gravel, when, if ever, would they be paved, and who would be responsible for that? Or are we going to be left with gravel roads indefinitely?
We're not going to answer that right now.
Okay.
Point taken.
Okay. And then I just wanted to reiterate Eric's and Julia's concerns about traffic, particularly during construction. And also, I would like to see Frederick, for the same reasons Julia stated, be completed all the way through. And then the other comment I wanted to make is to the gentleman's concern about the cost per square foot. As the presenter said, these are not manufactured homes, and Mayor John has already visited that facility, and I agree with it. This is new age in a environmentally controlled situation. This is going to be much better than site-built homes, quicker, and for us that are going to live in a construction zone, I was really happy to hear that. And I think I've seen some really excellent modular homes. I'm a real estate broker too, and the cost per square foot at $225 is really good. You're not even seeing that in new construction in Montrose. So looks like a great project and a great product. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Preston, is there anyone else?
Joe Mikulich.
Good evening. I too agree with Nina about the
Name
building
and address,
itself.
Joe.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Jill Mihelich, 240 South Elizabeth. So I live right in town in Ridgway. And I agree with Nina about the building process. I'm familiar with this whole project, and I love how it really does cut down on waste. My concern, or my question is, have any of these other projects had the question come up about gray water recycling, or some might phrase it laundry to landscape? Thank you.
TJ, would you like to, or are we just noting that?
Just noting it.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public on Zoom?
No.
Any questions from the public here in the room? Please step up to the podium, state your name and address.
Pam Foister, 435 Terrace Drive. I served on the Master Plan Steering Committee a couple of years ago, and this is exactly what we were hoping for. So there are concerns and things and challenges that will have to be met. I think there's nothing wrong with the gravel road. When we did the planning, we knew that commercial areas needed to be paved for a lot of reasons. Residential doesn't necessarily, and gravel's fine. Traffic is slower on gravel roads than paved. which addresses the children and, you know, the bikes and the kids and everybody that walks around and the dogs. And, you know, if the alleyway is a one-way street, and it's only used by the residents, I don't foresee a problem. They will all learn to live with each other in that alleyway. So I fully support this project.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come on up.
My name is Kuno Vollenweider. I live 295 South Mary Street in Ridgway. My major concern is that as the town develops, I would like to see us enter into a process, or a question that I suppose is, who would enter into the process of condemnation for half of Laura Street so that we can build it right from the start? And in connection with this, with all these homes and all these folks coming in and going to school, I would like also at the same time the town to consider a condemnation process to access pedestrian access from River Park to the high school. I've been in front of council mentioning that a few months ago, but that's my major concern, that we don't forget that if we approve something like this, we need to have access for the children to actually go to school without trespassing on private property, which they have been doing in the last year or two consistently. And
So you're talking about River Park Hill Elementary School out to County Road 5?
no, I'm talking about to the high school.
Oh,
There's no direct access from the town that, and I think this would be a good time to also acquire that in the same frame of making sure that we have a way of going through town. Bikes and walking and cars. And so for the development of the section of the triangle that was in front of the town council, that has been coming on to a development stage, maybe sooner than later. And I think we should address Laura Street explicitly for that, that it continuously goes from the town all the way to Railroad Street.
thank
That's
you.
my comment. Thank you.
Do we have any other public comment on this project?
Clint Estes, 833 Clinton Street. I think just an imposition on you guys. You know, we've sat here for 10 years. I'm also a contractor, built in Ridgway for 15 years, and talked about affordable housing. I think these guys have a great plan put together, and if allowances are going to be made and accommodations made for developments, this is something the town needs. And to Kuno's point, I also second a public thoroughfare to be taken into consideration in some mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before I close public comment? Public comment is now closed. Back to the planning commission. I'll start with the Zoom. Do you guys have anything, concerns, questions?
Yeah, John Clark here again. Sorry, Russ. Just a couple things. I guess, you know, as mayor, I feel like I want to address Elizabeth's comments a little bit. Elizabeth, I totally share your concerns about climate change and some of the dire conditions we face in today's world. At the same time, we're a small town that has an economy that needs support, and not even, I mean, I shouldn't even put it in terms of the economy. We're a small town, we're a community that needs support. And we are rapidly becoming a place where only the rich will be able to live if we don't approve projects like this. And I feel really strongly about that. I understand your concerns about, you know, conventional vehicle miles traveled, but town of Ridgway is different. I think Michelle made a good point. I mean, I know I don't drive anywhere. I mean, I go a week or more without driving anywhere. And I know that's not everybody's reality, but when you build a project like this that's in such close proximity to downtown and the amenities we have here, there's less need for people to drive. Maybe someday we'll get Mountain Market to do something about having a locals discount and people can shop locally even more. But I think this is the kind of thing we can't just well, for one thing, we can't just turn down development proposals because we think climate change is so dire that we can't have development. That's not the way the system works. But I just feel like that bears saying. On the comment that was made about the alley, I was a little confused because all the alleys in town are 15, 16 feet. I can't remember which it is, but so is it being, well, it was 15 for years, but now I guess it's 16. It's being widened to 20 to allow for the extra drainage swale. Is that right?
No. TJ, you look like you're ready to talk.
Sure, yeah, and I'll just address that I assume that most of the original Ridgway plat was platted at 16-foot wide alleys. The standard through the code right now is 20-foot alleys. So typically what would happen is when new development comes in or redevelopment that would constitute a change or significant change, you would bring elements such as alley widths and roadway widths up to current standards. So that's, I believe, the discussion there, and through the assessment, it wasn't necessarily warranted staff didn't feel that it was necessarily warranted to increase to the 20 feet. The 16-foot width seemed adequate.
I appreciate that perspective, John, because I didn't realize that most of them are 16 foot. I meant to measure mine.
All the originally platted lots and blocks are 300-foot square. The strip of blocks that are on either side of Clinton Street have alleys running both directions, creating these little quarter block sections with funnily dimensioned lots on the ends. But conventional blocks everywhere else are 12 lots on each side, and the lots are 143.5 feet deep. And you multiply that by 2 and you get 287, right? Anyway, that's where the 15, 16 feet, I can't do the math in my head right now. That's where the 15, 16 feet came in. And that block is platted, correct, TJ?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, so my take on the need to bring development up to the standards is only in places where it's not already platted lots and blocks, that like it is in this case. But I don't want to get caught in a confusing mire on this. So if the developer and the staff are in agreement on how it's going to be dealt with, that's totally fine by me. I guess that the only other things I'd like to stress is what a couple of the commenters said about gravel streets. All the residential neighborhoods in town are gravel. I get questions from people all the time about, when are we going to get more pavement in the rest of town, either because they don't like mag chloride or because they don't like the dust or both. It's going to take a massive undertaking, a massive financing effort to even do what we might do in some communities, what some communities have done with chip seal. I'd personally like to see us do something more kind of cutting edge, where we use one of these new processes that people are developing, where they take the existing dirt and mix in a little bit of Portland and create kind of like a natural cement, where we're not having to use petroleum products in asphalt or chip seal to do a more impermeable or actually ideally it would be a permeable but less dusty, dirty surface treatment. But we're gonna have to do that all over town, and when it's going to be done, we don't know. But if we can make this project more affordable by allowing the streets to be gravel and completing both Frederick and Otto to Cora Street, I'd be all in favor of that. So, and Elizabeth, I see you got your hand up again. We're past the public comment section, so I'm afraid there won't be another opportunity to speak unless the chair wants to open it back up. But suffice it to say that some of us definitely share your concerns, but we're trying to balance the needs of the community with everything else that's going on. Sorry, I rambled a bit there, but
If I could summarize on the streets, what I'm hearing is that everyone would like to see gravel, Otto, Laura, and Frederick all the way through. John did mention as a concession that it would be possible for maybe some in-kind work by town staff. So maybe town could put in, I'm just throwing this out there, I'm not making any commitments. The culvert at Frederick Street or some part of it, I think you contract a company probably to come in and do this. So I don't know how the town piece would play out, but I think that's interesting as a concession, since it sounds like we want all the streets finished gravel. Is that, who would disagree with that? On the Excellent. So the next issue I think we need to look at is this tract 15 and what our opinions are on that. I know the town doesn't want to take responsibility for it or ownership of it. And I'm wondering what the options might be, if that's something Public Works could take a look at and take the time that it would take. I don't know if that's possible until it's actually in. So perhaps TJ, you could speak to what our options might be.
I would actually press
Excellent.
Personnel and operations.
So what's before you all now is a recommendation to town council. Options are recommend that the town take ownership of that tract and maintenance responsibility for that tract, or not, which would, the latter option would require the applicant to figure something out. I don't want to speak for Joanne Pagan, our town engineer, but I will, even though she's not here. She is vehemently opposed to the town of Ridgway having to be responsible for a private development, stormwater. It would set a precedent, although this development is already somewhat precedent setting, given that it's truly affordable housing project from a nonprofit type of developer, which is what we haven't seen before. I would concur with Joanne that, and I mentioned Joanne, but I speak on behalf of our Public Works Department too. As a whole, the consensus would be that that's not something that we believe the town should be responsible for maintaining on a regular basis, no matter how simple the maintenance responsibilities are,
Okay.
Easy or not.
So if a developer had bought that tract and subdivided it into lots and sold off the lots individually, who would deal with the stormwater?
Well, and I think that's one of the things I wasn't able to mention earlier. Where the standard is coming from, I want to be absolutely clear that it is a state statute and it goes up to EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, that all development or all land has to keep water and detain it and release it off property at the same historic rate that it has pre-development. So that's where the standard comes from, so that it doesn't have a downstream effect. It doesn't, because it's time and duration. So as David mentioned earlier, right now it's vacant. It just kind of seeps in and very little of it, the stormwater runs off. When we start adding rooftops and driveways and other impermeable surfaces, it'll flow faster. So it gets to its destination quicker and in a larger volume. And so what that whole standard is, it is the requirement through the subdivision process for the subdivider to do that through that process. So this isn't something that is a negotiation, if you will, quote unquote. Those who couldn't see my air quotes. This is a standard that is not just a Ridgway standard, not just the state of Colorado standard. This is a national standard. And so when Preston's talking about a precedent, we're not necessarily just looking at the town of Ridgway going against the town of Ridgway standard. There are really good precautions for it. And this is across the board, the standard operating procedures that some type of an association or a district manages these types of facilities. Now, with that being said, this is a very simple facility. So there's that component. And then, Chair, to your point or your question directly, if things were sold off, who would do that? And that's where the comment comes in, that we want to add notes that this not be a lot that insinuates that it's able to be developed. It be a tract that cannot be developed and is dedicated for this purpose only. Because, but for this tract, it cannot meet specific standards.
So my question comes from, I don't see, is there a precedent for this in town? Like the lots, the 2 blocks, 2 half blocks to the south of this project have recently been developed. Is there a place where stormwater is dealt with on those?
I'm not 100% sure what you're speaking to directly, but this is a standard that's tied to a subdivision process, not a building permit process. So when a building permit comes in, we review it to make sure that it's draining in conformance with its design previously. But when a parcel subdivides, we make sure that there's adequate, because it's a larger area, larger runoff, more impervious surface, lot coverage, things like that, where it's calculated.
Okay.
So this is the point in the process that it is, and then everything else is built off of this.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the rest of the commissioners if they've got any ideas on this one or opinions.
Well, I'd like to know whether the applicant has a plan B.
Okay. Applicant, would you like to share a plan B with us?
We'd like to talk to Preston tomorrow. No, I think Plan B is some kind of private covenant. We're not going to build an HOA. HOA makes no sense whatsoever. So private covenant on that big parcel of land. Just to make one comment, towns do take these detention ponds as part of ownership. It's a public benefit, as TJ was saying. It's a public benefit to protect the town with Clean Water Act, the EPA Clean Water Act. So there is a precedent for towns to take these. If the town doesn't want it, we'll figure out Plan B.
I personally like your idea of not creating an HOA. I've never heard of someone who loves their HOA.
I agree.
A covenant sounds like an interesting possibility. Thank you.
Thank
I
you, Bill.
agree.
Commissioners, do you see any other issues that we need to address?
I kind of tried to touch on this earlier, but I was curious, what is the traffic flow pattern for Laura with only one lane?
My guess is that there's no parking.
Yeah, it's not necessarily just one lane. I mean, that should let the staff and the applicant talk about it, but we're talking 30 feet. It's 30 feet of a 60 feet right away. So without parking, there's enough room for 2 travel ways. Is that what you guys are thinking,
TJ was ready to say something.
staff?
Or Preston.
Yeah, so pulling up the civil design for this that was submitted. Sorry, my computer's going a little slow. There's a 20-foot travel lane which allows lane traffic, two-way traffic, but no on-street parking. So it's adequate for the travel lane session.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're giving up parking on that street in order to have two-way traffic. Otherwise, it would have to be one way.
Generally correct, yes.
Does that make sense for us?
Yeah, it does. So I'm assuming we'll have adequate signage to reflect that as well.
And that'll be important.
Okay,
And then,
thanks.
and then if and when that does get widened in the future, then we have a discussion about on-street parking at that.
I think there just would be.
There just would, right?
Yeah, unless there was a reason.
Yep.
Perhaps I'm ready for a motion. I'm scrolling. unless someone wants to jump in. I think I can make the motion, can I?
Yeah.
I'll just do it. Upon review of the application against applicable town standards, I move upon review of the application against applicable town standards, staff recommends that the Town of Ridgway Planning Commission approve the Yellow Brick Lane sketch plan with the following conditions. 1, the preliminary plat and PUD plan for the Yellow Brick Lane be approved by the town council and all conditions of such approval be met. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Actually, Madam Chair, if I may, just a point to clarify on the motion. Scroll down further, we really want to make sure that, well, staff's recommending that we make sure that all outstanding planning and engineering comments be addressed adequately prior
That's
to.
the PUD part. There's two
That's the
separate.
second one.
That, so you already said that?
No, it's a
No,
separate.
that's
motion.
the second.
Sorry. Sorry, I apologize.
So I have a second. I do, what?
Is there a process for changing from lot to for lot? Does that need to happen?
If so desired, yes, the commission could.
I think there's a lot of sorting out on that that
Okay.
needs to happen, so we probably
Okay.
don't need to go
Okay.
there.
I would just suggest that it is a comment in the comment letters. So in essence, jumping ahead, making assumptions, I don't necessarily like doing that. But if the preliminary plat and PUD plan were recommended to approve, it would be covered by that condition.
Got it.
I just want to make one comment that I forgot to make earlier about the Yellow Brick Lane. I also am not very fond of that name, and I think lane insinuates a street or a location, and so people are going to be like, where's Yellow Brick Lane? And it doesn't exist. So just wanted to second that comment. Any other discussion before we vote on this sketch plan?
I just have one comment that I am also in support of some kind of connection between the different neighborhoods and how this project will link those. So I am in support of something related to that. Because currently there is a path that many people use on Laura on that side. So I am in support of addressing that as it continues.
I think we're ready for a vote.
Okay. Commissioner Emelson,
Aye.
Franz, aye. Bliss,
Aye.
Nelson, aye. Mayor Pro Tem Meyer,
Aye.
Mayor Clark,
Aye.
person like you.
Aye.
There you go.
Great. Can I get a motion on the preliminary plat and PUD plan? Or else I'll make one.
I could make that motion. This is Mayor Clark. Upon review of application against applicable town standards, the planning commission, I move that the planning commission recommends preliminary plat and preliminary PUD approval to the town council with the following condition. The applicant shall address all outstanding planning and engineering comments identified in the review comment letters attached to the staff report to the satisfaction of town staff prior to the application being scheduled for consideration before the town council.
I'll second that.
Any comment? I would just like to reiterate, I think staff has this, but the idea on the road completion, I think they stated it clearly. What we're hoping to see.
Yep, we have that collective direction.
Okay. I think we're ready for a vote then.
All right. Okay, Commissioner Emelson,
Aye.
Franz,
Aye.
Bliss,
Aye.
aye. Mayor Pro Tem Meyer,
Aye.
Mayor Clark,
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now the one that everyone's waiting for. Here we go. I got it. It's scrolling. It's a big packet. All right, I'd like to introduce the next item, which is a request for approval of a sketch plan to create 20 single-family residential lots. Location Lot 2 of McChesney subdivision, Town of Ridgway, and southeast one quarter of section. Is that a typo? Okay, I'll continue. Of section 9 and northeast quarter of the northeast quarter of section 16, all in the T45 North R8W of the NMPM, except that portion being described as lots 25 through 48 in the common ground of Vista Terrace subdivision, filing number 1, Town of Ridgway. Generally located north and east of Terrace Drive, east of Highway 550. Residential zoning as well as residential district and future development. Currently vacant and 1 single family residential unit. Applicant is Chris Hawkins, Alpine Planning, owner 4 Winds Ranch 1 LLLP, and Bernadine C. Endicott. You're on.
Can I say something, please? We were advised over the internet this was not going to come up in this afternoon. I know it was in the newspaper, but we received emails that this was not going to be brought up.
I believe that TJ is going to go to that right now.
So before we dive into this, the staff report, I want to do some just ground rules or expectations, just kind of what we were just talking about. So just to remind the commission of etiquette and process, if you will. So first, a reminder that any planning commissioners, these are public hearings. They are quasi judicial. Therefore, if any commissioner had ex parte communication with members of the public, the applicants, anyone outside of the hearing, please disclose that. As far as the process for the public who are here and online, the meeting process is we'll do staff presentation, followed by the applicant presentation, followed by questions from the planning commission to both staff and or the applicant. And then we'll open public comment. Please keep your comments concise, limited, generally 3 to 5 minutes. If somebody else says the same comment, you can just get up and say ditto, kind of thing, not directly, but don't rehash the same comments. Then, as we just saw, planning commission, the chair closes the public comment. That is the end of the public component of it. And then there's commission deliberation, which includes additional comments, questions of staff, the applicant, and maybe anyone who made a comment through the public comment period. But again, we're not here to answer public comments, questions on the dais. We'll take them under advisement and address them through that deliberation process. And then the planning commission makes the motion and so on and so forth to make the recommendation. So that's general. I just wanted to kind of bring that back since I know we have a lot of comments here this evening, and then what we just kind of went through a little bit. So again, all comments, please direct through the chair to the planning commission, and don't have sidebar conversations on the comment dais. So with that, and I appreciate the gentleman in the back ruin my thunder bringing this up, but yes, as this is the application that we have in front of us, a application for a sketch plan for the Four Winds subdivision. After the staff report was sent out to the Planning Commission on Friday, May 27th, the applicant submitted a request to continue the hearing for 1 month to address some of the issues and concerns brought up by town staff in that staff report, as well as some of the public comments received. Staff is amenable to this request and would recommend that Planning Commission continue this item to your June 28th meeting. And since this meeting has been noticed, we do want to be respectful of public time. However, we ask that tonight's comments be only specific to the request in front of the commission, which is to continue. And the reason there, I want to be clear, is that we don't have the public forum. We're not presenting through the public hearing and creating that public record of the application. So we can't deliberate that at this time. It would be at that next meeting. So the applicant, just again, for the record, the applicant has submitted a hearing application, the associated fees, the sketch plan materials, and other required material for the public hearing. The property has been posted and properly noticed in accordance with the Ridgway code requirements. And as of drafting this staff report, the town has received 16 written public comments. Those were included in the staff report. And I believe since that time, one additional has been received. And I'm not sure if we want to read that into the record or not. We might just want to bring that into the next.
I think so,
meeting
before we can only
is what I
comment
would
on the
recommend.
continuance.
And so with that, the staff would recommend that the Planning Commission continue the hearing, continue the application to the next hearing, sorry, the next meeting date, which is June 28th. I believe that Chris is here this evening, Chris Hawkins. I want to give him an opportunity to speak as well. But that's all I have, unless you have questions for me.
Would you like to speak?
Hi, good evening, Chris Hawkins with Alpine Planning. No, TJ covered it well. We just simply were surprised by several of the staff comments and certainly want some time to address those to have a proper hearing. Appreciate everyone's comments today and look forward to the future hearing. So thank you.
Do you feel like a month is enough time, or do you want it continued for 2 months?
I think a month is enough time to digest a lot of that stuff. It's key is going to be meeting with town staff to talk through some of the new comments that came up. We're also going to meet with some of the outside agencies and also go through the list, but I think a month is plenty of time, in my opinion. Tim, do you concur? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do the commissioners have any comments or questions?
Nope.
So I still need to open this to public comment, but I just want to clarify that the public comment is limited to the continuance of this proposal. We're not looking for input on the proposal. It won't be recorded. It needs to be, I apologize that you have to return, but it needs to be brought up at the next meeting when this is heard. Is everyone clear on that? Does anyone have a comment on the continuance of this? Please step to the podium, say your name and your address.
Anthony Giegoff, 615 Terrace Drive. Given the fact that all of us have sat through this meeting to this point, could we arrange for this to be the first item on the agenda for the June 28th meeting?
I don't have that authority. We can ask staff. I don't know if they can make that promise.
We can't make a promise, but we can certainly aim to make that happen. Certainly.
That would be appreciated.
And we certainly apologize for any inconvenience. That wasn't our intention. Does anyone have any other public comment on the continuance?
Hey, Michelle, John Clark here. Can I remind everybody that we're not to respond to the public comments? We're just to take them and then deal with them when we close the public comments.
Yeah.
We keep forgetting to do that. Go ahead.
Estes again. I guess this time I'm 205 Cimarron Drive in Vista Terrace. The continuance, I'd just like to clarify, this is just for a sketch plan review continuance. That's a question. And I know you're not supposed to, sorry, John.
I'm not sure if I can answer that.
I caught you right after reprimanding Mr. Mayor. I guess all I'm, the continuance of the sketch plan review, when I hear that city staff will be working with developers on the sketch plan, I'm just trying to clarify how that is gonna further push the sketch plan for review for next month.
We can discuss process after we close.
Excellent.
So, okay.
Would you like to address that?
Not right now.
Okay. Any other public comment on the continuance?
Pam Foister, 435 Terrace Drive. I understand that there's a continuance. It's certainly not my decision. I will alert you to the fact that I reviewed the master plan prior to coming to this meeting. And this sketch plan goes against almost everything in the master plan. So I want you to be aware of that as you do your review with the staff and start talking about things like that.
Thank you. Another comment on the continuance?
Dan Rillen, 550 Vista Terrace. The letters that we've submitted, will they be a part of that package going forward, or do we resubmit them based on the new sketch plan? Just want to try to understand that process.
I'm going to close public comment.
There's hand raised on this.
A Zoom public comment. Who is it?
Jennifer Cram.
Hi, I can't start my video, but seems like you guys have it blocked, but I guess there. I guess there's any way it was continued. Maybe I missed something, but right. I just listened. I didn't know it was continued, and it was something I was interested in. And so if there's some way to let people know that things have changed, it looks to me like the agenda packet is the same as it was a week ago. So if there's any way to let people know what's going on, that would be appreciated. That's my comment. Thank you.
Any other Zoom public comment? I'm closing
Since they have put it off, if they do change the plans and stuff, it would be nice to meet with them again as we met with them before, review that with them. So if there are changes because of being put off, it'd be nice to, I think, to at least notify us, we know the changes, and then we can meet with the developer and the engineer again, or with you, so we can discuss, not just make comment, but discuss with them again. Personally, I think that's why it was put off, because after we did have a meeting, there was a lot of things that we discussed with the engineer, with the developer. They had no idea we were talking about, and they had no clue when I asked Dan, the engineer, about height requirements and stuff. He didn't know. So my comment is please inform us, or a comment that would be proper for us to do that, so that we can at least have a chance to review that ourselves, please.
Can you add your name and address for the
Yes,
record?
my name is Joe Woodick. I'm at 720 Lands End.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I am closing public comment. And I am ready for a motion to continue this application.
So moved.
I guess that's it. A second? Russ? And a vote? Vote?
I still want.
John Clark.
Okay. And
Sorry.
I wanted to also mention, Madam Chairman, that we did get a late add on public comment, but it's in general. It's not specific to any of the projects specifically, but it is a general comment that would sometime before the meeting ends. So now we're going to take a vote on the continuance. Commissioner Emelson,
Aye.
Franz. Aye. Lisk,
Aye.
Nelson. Aye. Mayor Pro Tem Meyer,
Aye.
Mayor Clark,
Aye.
and Chairperson Montague.
Aye. Thank you all for coming. And let's take a 5-minute break while the room clears out.
You're doing good. This is hard. I'm impressed.
I know the hardest thing was making that application. And yes. It's hard not to respond. I know. It's kind of nice. Yeah. But to remember. I guess. Preston? You okay? Any concerns? Are we doing all right?
Doing good. Well done. Close that public comment pretty quick.
Yeah, I was done with that.
How are you doing? I'm good, yeah. Did you?
You can make faces. It's good. I make faces.
I like stories.
I know it's. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I saw that you did. For which? No.
Thanks, but thanks. And I didn't say that answer.
Okay, but you.
Question, I'm like, thank you.
Spring water? I didn't attend to. Okay. I just thought they had a discussion.
And I would sign the email.
I know.
Maybe. And most of it was more intro. Yeah.
I know.
It's good.
I have so many notes. I know. I guess.
Let's go. Have a good night, Bob. I think the sketch plans really like give our comments about, well, I don't know if that road should be there. I don't know if it should be that. Staff kind of covers engineering, drainage, landscaping. Seems like correct. Then you accomplish that. Yeah. I was recording. But it is.
Isn't all this stuff happening right around you? Are you? Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise it comes. I was gonna ask how that affects how the cost of the tax. Well, I think they got what they wanted. That was a proposal.
So we did.
But if they didn't ask her. I mean, it seems to me. Developers. Hard to get. Right, I mean, I was a little. I said nothing. I was actually. Yeah. She's so quiet. Oh my God. Okay. I drove the main guy, we report the main guy. So we're gonna do the national park. So we're gonna go west side. She's gonna go right. They used to have. Right here. Yeah. Okay.
So one of that. South. So you can just yeah. There's also like
It's the new code that's starting to make it bigger. So it's not any smaller than what we already have.
No, because we went and looked at that aluminum. Oh.
Gotta get back at it, folks. I know, it's not anything I haven't heard.
Hey, guys, I haven't seen you in a while. You know, right? Yeah.
It's at the bottom because I read through the whole thing. Okay. I'm on, I have a separate. Oh, Preston has it up there, 231. Okay, I guess I'm calling the meeting back to order after our brief break and introducing the next application. A request of approval of a sketch plan to create a mixed-use planned unit development and subdivision plat. Lot 3, Ridgway Land Company subdivision, Town of Ridgway, County of Uray, State of Colorado, east of Highway 550 on the northwest corner of Hunter Parkway and Red Cliff Drive. General commercial with PUD, 1 commercial office building and vacant. I'm sorry, that's the current use. The applicant is Jack Young and Joseph Nelson, To Build Ridgway LLC, and the owner is Rob Hunter, managing partner, Ridgway Land Company LLLP. And I will hand it over to TJ since he's here.
Excellent. Yeah, so I'm surprised. I'm sorry, everyone online. I make the trip out here and I scare everyone away, apparently. Yeah, so what we have, as you mentioned, in front of us is a sketch plan for both a subdivision plat and a PUD. The applicant is seeking the sketch plan approval to modify the overall development of lot 3, including land uses, circulation, internal circulation, parking, utility alignments, accesses, and dimensional standards. The current PUD zoning allows development of commercial uses. However, it specifically does not allow any residential units to be developed. Just to remind the commission, I don't remember exactly when it was, but I think it was February. We had a discussion with these applicants to determine the process. And so it's since then that we've gotten the application for the sketch plan as we talked about. And so that's what brought us here to today. So the sketch plan application anticipates a replat of lot 3 into as few as 4 separated lots. These lots include the existing Remax building, which would be referred to as lot 1. Preston, if you don't mind just scrolling up a little bit more to show that whole, there we go. So that's the bottom right, like pink, purplish color is lot 1. The west side apartments, lot 2, which is the blue. East side mixed use, lot 3, which is kind of the full north portion. And then lot 4 is the common areas, which is the road coming through and looks like detention on the left side of the drawing. So lot 2 is proposed to have 6 single-family attached units for a total of 36 residential units. The area labeled lot 3 shows 6 buildings labeled as condominiums. These structures are described as 3-story mixed-use structures with residential units on the top 2 floors and commercial on the ground level. One of the mixed-use condominium buildings is proposed for employee workforce housing. That's for 6 residential units. This lot also shows freestanding restaurant with a swimming. Lot 4 encompasses the the common areas, including the main access road through the development and the proposed detention pond. Overall, the plan proposes 62 residential units at a gross density of 6.92 dwelling units per acre. The residential units will include 1 and 2 bedroom units. The land uses described in the plan and in the narrative are all uses allowed by right in the general commercial district. And as you might remember, in order to be allowed in a PUD, it has to be either a use allowed by right or conditionally in the underlying zone district. So in this case, the underlying zone district is the commercial, general commercial district. However, based on some of the descriptions in there, it's hard to determine in the application and the narrative, it's hard to determine exactly how they would be defined in the Ridgway Municipal Code. So that's going to be a clarifying component that we're looking for. But in general, they all seem to fit within the uses allowed in the general commercial district. So the parcel is identified as mixed use business on the future land use map of the 2019 master plan. This anticipates a density between 12 and 18 units per acre and typically 3 stories. Primary use is identified in this district or in this land use classification are retail stores, professional offices, commercial offices, and restaurants. High density residential uses are identified as a supporting use. The goals and policies identified in the 2019 master plan, which are considered during the review of the project and identified in the project's conformance with the plan, are listed in the staff report. As discussed in the staff report, there appears to be ample area to meet the dimensional standards of the dimensional standards table of section 7.3.15a. However, there wasn't sufficient information provided with the sketch plan, nor does there really need to be at this level, to really confirm exactly what those, how those are going to be met. Additional information will obviously be provided with the preliminary plat to clearly identify compliance with those standards. Additional discussion is provided for building height, setbacks, parking, and landscape standards in the staff report. Again, we can talk about those if needed, but they're in the staff report. Jumping over to utilities, which I think is one of the biggest unknowns or the biggest items based on the review, is that the project is currently served by or will be served by town water and sewer systems. There are currently main water and sewer lines installed throughout the project property and within dedicated easements. However, given the change in use, there are unknowns associated with the increased water and sewer demands. So when you switch from commercial to residential uses, both of those services increase. And so that's still something that we're working through with the applicant, and we'll want more additional information with the preliminary plat. However, given the so there are still the unknowns, as I mentioned, with the increase in the water and sewer demand, but also the alignment and the design. So extension, where does it need to be extended to serve the new buildings or the uses based on the new alignments? And then the need for offsite improvements as we identify in here in the staff report. And most of that has to do with a lift station and kind of working with the sewer system to connect to the system on the west side of 550. Again, those are all items that are identified in the staff report, identified in the staff review comments, and comments and issues that will have to be resolved or at least further identified and discussed with the applicant. So those comments that include staff and consultant comments are included in the staff report for the Planning Commission's consideration this evening. Not necessarily conditions, but we'll get to the recommendation here in a minute. And again, the applicant has submitted, part of just what we have to go through. The applicant has submitted a hearing application, the associated fees and other requirements for the sketch plan application for this hearing to the town. The property has been posted and proper notification has been completed by the town in accordance with municipal code requirements. As of the drafting of the staff report, no public comment either for or against has been received. And for the staff recommendation, as I said, it's for the sketch plan is a little bit less specific, but staff does recommend that the Planning Commission approve the Lot 3 to build Ridgway sketch plan, incorporating staff review comments and other items discussed at this hearing into the findings. So with that, the applicant is here, and I'm sure they'd like to present as well, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission might have of me at the moment.
Do the commissioners have any questions before we hear from the applicant? Okay, you're on.
Doug McFarland is online and he requested to speak first.
Okay,
I'm zoomed in and I can start the video. It's saying that.
we
my
don't
whole-
need, oh, we can't see it anyway.
Oh, okay. Start my video. Well, if you can hear me, then that's good. So, anyway, oh, there I am. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to, review this project. And I wanted to thank TJ in particular for a thorough job on going through the code and, working with us on how we can meet the regulations as we go through the sketch plan process. So, we're pretty much okay with working with the way that he has described the requirements and conditions in terms of, parking, use, basically infrastructure. We've talked about a lot of it with him and we've read through his information carefully. So we feel like, for instance, parking, because we don't know exactly what the commercial uses would be, we kind of use the restaurant calc, which is 1 per 100 gross square feet, which, is, we know what that one is. The other commercial, we used a 1 per 250 for retail. But if something should pop up that creates a need for more parking, we have 10 additional spaces already and we have room for more. So I think, and also to clarify, the off-street stuff is not in the counts. So we feel like we've got, room to work with staff to make those and other things work out in terms of fitting on the ground. One of the things that we heard loud and clear when we came to the Planning Commission last for some informal comment was addressing the gateway aspects and the view shed aspects. And so as you can see in your packet, what we've done is we reduced the apartments along the highway, the sixplex buildings, we reduced those to 2-story. And what we tried for was some wood materials in the gables, which are the most prominent aspect of that design, in order to get kind of a vernacular feel that is not quite so modern, but then we did the flatter roofs on the sides just to drop the overall height to keep things as low profile as we could with our 2-story configuration. We also have gaps between the buildings. We would anticipate installing and maintaining some landscaping, more landscaping along the highway to make that more attractive and buffer it from the highway, both for visual and for the residents. And then on the 3-story commercial, what we did was we've always proposed a story of retail, and then we have 2 stories of residential above that. And we went to flat roofs to constrain the whole thing to a 35-foot maximum at the tallest points in the middle of the building, which fits within the underlying criteria for conditional use in the zone. And so we were trying to keep things as low profile as possible. And, we do have a couple of images that were, I put together some basically montage 3D stuff that attempts to show what you see from adjacent parcel, what you see from the highway, to just quantify a little bit what the look would be. And, we feel like, we were trying to be real proactive in reducing the height along the highway, accepting, or not accepting, but, understanding and responding to the idea that this is a gateway project, and then keeping things within the, the parameters of the project as low profile as possible. So those were things that we've been working on. In terms of the infrastructure issues, like I said, we're happy to work with TJ and staff to work through the specifics. At the end of the day, we end up with about 45% hard surface between roofs and parking, and about 55% green space between. So we feel like we haven't filled this up to where we have no landscaping and green space. And we're certainly happy to discuss again with staff what the best landscaping is to fit the project. So I think, we're excited about the project as it's kind of taking shape in 3D form, working to make something that will fit the market parameters today, since obviously since 1990, nothing has stuck yet. And we feel like the approach that, the town has been helping us through with the sketch plan process of utilizing what's there, because we have utilities in the ground, not wildly deviating, but, making the change in the residential commercial mixed use, provides some tax benefits to the town and provides something that we think can be viable and an asset to the community. So that said, I'm sure Joe has a few things to add, but, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Doug. I would just like to say thank you for doing such a good job and thoroughly looking at all of what we've put into this thing so far. It is getting time, but we do have some really comprehensive 3D modeling coming forward that I think everybody will appreciate. Aside from that, I think this is one of the better parcels in town to accept a higher density model, because we have roads in place, we have a signalized intersection for egress often on the highways, which is the only place in Ridgway that there is that it helps to handle the higher density housing. So we feel as though the site is perfect for what we're proposing, and obviously wanting feedback from all of you. We're trying to mitigate and bring a quality of presence, looking from the highway to the apartments there on the very lower part in blue. And aside from that, I think another advantage of the project is our irrigation water rights. It's a place that we can actually not burden the town with water needs for landscaping. We would like to develop water features of some kind, and we do have abundant water rights, and we'd have to do some calculations for evaporation and all that. But we think the water features could really be a nice add to the commercial area, and more like a park setting for everyone to use there. And we just think that'd be a real nice feature. I know, as DJ outlined in his staff report, there was some concern about using the water. I just feel like we have enough water rights, we can use it responsibly, and we would like to have that considered as all. And we can do it without it, with no water features, but we do think it would add to the ambiance and quality of the community. We do have some ideas for how to work with town on, aside from delivering 36 market rate apartments, we have a lot of different ideas on how to either work within the AMI guidelines, but I think we have more creative ways that the town will like bring down the cost for workforce housing. And I think it's a good opportunity for the town to, you know, bring itself up in the number of rental units available, even at a market rate. And then I think we just need to come along with some ideas on how to fit in some affordable units, which I think we have abundant ideas for. So anyway, look forward to working with you on it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else from the applicant right now? I will ask commissioners for comments and questions.
I had some questions. On this particular drawing, it says up in the left-hand corner, density 88 units. What, can you explain?
I'm sorry, did you say that again?
The picture here shows the density 88 units. I'm confused on the units or what that 88 units is.
There's 36 units in the apartments.
Right.
There's 20 condos. So 56 plus another 6 units off to the right.
So that's 60.
62.
Yeah, so what's the 88 units
The
mean?
88 units is what it was approved for previously. I take that back. 88. I don't know where the 88
No, this
is.
is the 54 units of the total. 54.
That including the commercial, does that add up to the 88, the commercial units?
I guess I'm not, I don't know where the 88 is. That's.
It's
You can speak in the microphone.
Oh, it's up on that top left corner of the drawing.
Oh, I'm sorry. That is the 88 units that are the condos.
Oh, the condos.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and 88 of them are not built. But it's approved for 88. There's
Okay.
64 there now.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I just really
I
confused
said
me.
88 confused me. Sorry.
And can you just go over the sidewalks and paths that you guys are doing?
I'm sorry to show up.
Yeah, I'm just.
The paths around, there is the path built already here, like.
Yes.
Signal. And then we have paths completely around the property on the perimeter. And then throughout the property, 3 different areas. So, and the pathways do connect. And this pathway connects through here. I think there was a comment from TJ about the possibility of connecting to some other possible path over the highway or something speaking to. And obviously we work with the town on, you know, of bringing our circulation to whoever we choose to incorporate any of your paths. If that makes sense.
Okay. More? No? my questions.
Commissioners on Zoom, any questions for TJ or the applicant?
Yes, I have some. This is John Clark. I apologize. I'm gonna throw a wrench into things here. The more I look at this, the more I can't understand why the residential component would be along the highway and the commercial component would be on the east side. Makes no sense to me at all. We all know how much traffic comes through Ridgway all the time and how much noise there is from the traffic. Why isn't the residential on the inside and the commercial on the outside?
Partly because the 3 stories would be required to develop any of the commercial. From a financial standpoint, it's really difficult to develop commercial today. It just doesn't pencil out. And the only way to develop it is to have residential above.
That doesn't mean it has to be 3 stories. You can have commercial on the ground floor and residential above and not have it be 3 stories.
That's correct. We just thought that this was a better way to go, and especially for view planes and so on. And I didn't think that the exposure of the commercial, what we see this more as a neighborhood commercial, not a highway commercial. I believe truly that we mitigate noise and visual aspects along the highway with trees and berming and so on.
That's required anyway.
I understand, but the idea of having commercial as a frontage, there's no access because of the signal. It just didn't make a lot of sense to us. So, and we do think the center area that almost becomes a common area, park setting for the residential and the commercial together. It felt like it made more sense to us is all.
Doug wants to add something.
Yeah, is that okay if I just weigh
Yeah,
in?
go ahead.
One of the reasons on the commercial is we want to set this up to succeed and not end up with vacant space. And having front and back access for commercial, I think, is a more viable way to, work retail, have access that functions not just on one side, and give us more opportunities to make that that commercial function. Joe mentioned the berming and the landscaping, and we would be cognizant of highway noise, but there's strategies for sound reductive glazing, et cetera, et cetera. And we just felt like putting the lower level residential up front, and then, as Joe mentioned, the neighborhood commercial in the back where we can access it from 2 sides for operation, made more sense for how we would make those commercial spaces function. So that was a big part of the thinking. And I understand what you're saying, why wouldn't you throw the commercial to where it's got more visibility and it buffers the residential? And I'm not saying that doesn't have merit to that thought, but that's our thought process. We feel like we can mitigate the sound aspects, put the best phase forward with the residential as a gateway, and then come up with the most functional possible arrangement for this neighborhood commercial, which we really picture as this almost like a walkway promenade in front of the stores, hand trucks can run down that. There would be ideally the couple of water features. In the landscaping, there'd be bridges and, we feel like that can be an attractive area in and of itself. And then the good access right through the middle of the parcel with vehicle access on both sides of the building gives us some opportunities to make those commercial buildings function a little better. So that's,
Okay, well,
I would just like to add.
I'm not sure go ahead, Joe.
We
Were you
have,
gonna say something?
yes, we have existing utilities. We're not trying to, just tear out east. And so it limited us to the area where these apartments are. You notice it's fairly narrow, like where the Pondo's pond is down on the left. The area is so narrow there that we couldn't get circulation behind it. And we just didn't think it made a lot of sense to tear out. There's probably, at this kind of rates today, there's probably a good $1 million worth of infrastructure in the ground out there. And we thought we'd be best trying to utilize that. And I'm really convinced that as the condos are on the highway there, and they seem to be, very acceptable in that price range of market. And partly here, we're trying to bring some reasonably affordable market rate rentals. And it may not be perfect, but I think it's the best option for that parcel.
Well, and the commercial has residential on top of it too. So even if it was over there, you'd have some residential on the highway.
Yes.
Okay, well, let me go on to my other questions then. You just used a phrase that I'm not sure is even makes sense anymore, which is reasonably priced market rate housing. I don't think that exists. Based on we all know what the cost per square foot is on a typical basis for site built construction right now. So my other question, or one of my other questions is, there needs to be some deed restricted units here, and I'm not hearing any mention of that.
But we speak about
it.
Sorry.
Well, go ahead.
And our intention is to definitely try to bring some rental housing to the market. Just a partnership within our partnership entities. We probably need 20 housing units ourselves just for employees. And where are we going to get those things? This just happens to be, in my opinion, the best parcel. We don't have any concerns over gravel roads. They're all paved. We have.
Well, how are you going to make it so that the employees that you need to house can afford to rent those?
That's workable. And we'd like to make sure that the free market has an opportunity for some affordable rentals also. And I think this needs a much longer conversation that we'll be prepared for at the next meeting. What we needed at this point was some consensus on our basic footprints, because nothing can be developed engineering wise until we know the direction we're headed. So
understood.
Yeah, John.
So the last point I'd like to make, I don't want to overwhelm my time here, but I have to say that the idea of water features and using water rights that honestly I'd rather you dedicated to the town for our water needs for the community, rather than having ponds and Doug mentioned water features for aesthetics. I think it's totally irresponsible to be talking about water features that aren't actually putting water to the uses that we need them for in the climate change scenario that we live in right now in the drought. So I'd be totally opposed to just water features for water features sake, for aesthetic sake. We live in an extremely beyond comprehension drought that to be just, having fountains and things like that is just, in my view, that would be really irresponsible. So I'm totally opposed to that.
I have respect for that, and I think there's opportunities, that's all. And I'm not in full agreement that a use of a small amount of water to enhance our community this way. We just come from a different place, different opinion, and it's okay. I get it.
Well, I believe our master plan calls for the town acquiring water rights from properties that are subdivided. So I think this is another one that we need a lot of further discussion on, I think.
Cool.
All right, I'll let somebody else. I'll stop dominating.
Project can work without the water features.
DJ?
Madam Chair, if I just may, just again, again, I think what I'm hearing from the applicant is they want to listen. So I would suggest maybe let's go through all of the comments from the planning commission, not try to have conversations back and forth. Let's hear all the concerns. And then at that point, we'll see where it goes from there. But
okay.
Try to get all the comments and thoughts.
I'm sorry to put it, but I have to excuse myself from this meeting as I have to go to work. So I would like to do so at this point, and I just wanted to put in a couple comments before I leave about looking at this particular picture and reading the master plan, the policy environment 1.2. Leaving open space for wildlife and habitat, which we do have a lot of deer that come through there, and that's where they go through to get the water. So my concern was the wildlife areas and protecting that, and how they now won't be able to get through there. I don't see that happening with that amount of building on there. And also policy CHR 6.1, the small town character along the gateway. I just want to make sure that we keep that character as we come into town. So those were my 2 comments. Thank you.
That's up to the chair, as far as that. So
I think, like you said, let's get the comments down and then we'll come back to it. Thank you, Jennifer. Anything yet? Commissioners on the phone, do you have anything, or we'll go through the staff recommendations, comments? Let's do it. Do you want to go through the list of them?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Unless if there's any questions that the commissioners have, I'd be happy to expand on some of them.
Okay.
But I don't know that it's warranted to go through
Okay.
each one individually.
Do you guys on Zoom have any more comments?
Oh, I have a question
Okay.
that I think TJ brought up in his report on the ownership of the Remax building and whether that's lot 1 and whether they are a part of this. And if not, well, it appears as if this is redividing this, that they would need to be part of this request. I just like some clarification from the applicant as to what the status of the ownership of lot 1, the Remax property is, and how that affects their request.
I would just like to say, yes, they are part of the application and they're aware that this is the direction that they would like to go also. Does that answer your question?
Sure, as long as they're willing to sign off on it, they will have to. So sure, good.
Yes,
Thanks.
they are.
So far, what I've heard is that large water features are not in favor. What else? What else do you guys have? Come on.
Well, I think in terms of water, I think large bodies of water, I would absolutely agree with John on this. Recirculating small features might, that do not consume water on any kind of grand scale, or don't just impound them. I can see some moderate use of something like that. It's often done in the desert. The sound of water is an interesting and soothing aesthetic, much more than large bodies of water, which I once again agree with John would not be appropriate.
I thought I read something in the report that said there was a parcel of land for the town to build affordable housing. Is that still part of this?
That's under consideration, and that would be part of our negotiation
Uh-huh.
going forward.
And
More defined.
And I think that what I've heard, the comments on that I've heard are that the town's not really in a position to build housing.
That's what we took away from the last meeting, that they weren't interested in that offer.
But are interested in some type of affordable, deed restricted something.
Yes. And we propose to bring that forward.
Okay. So I'm guessing there'll be a few more comments, but are we moving towards approving this, or what's the?
Excuse me, Chair.
We have to open it for public comment.
Mhm.
Does the commission have any other comments or questions at the moment? I can come back after public comment.
I'll just throw in a couple of comments real quick. I think I gotta agree with the large bodies of water being wasteful for this area. Just given our current concerns, we should work as a town to try and acquire some of those water rights. I haven't seen or heard any explanation on the employee housing, clarifying exactly how that was going to work. I'm not a big fan of the housing right up against the highway. I know there's things you can do, but those engine brakes coming right down into town are going to wake all those folks up at night. And if there's a little extra spot of land to put it, I think a playground would be an awesome thing to put in. We've had a lot of requests for that from that side of the highway part of town. And I could see putting something like that in there. That's my 2 cents worth.
I'm gonna open it to public comment. If you have any public comment, to step up, name, address, and what your comment is.
Joe Harnsberger, 510 Red Cliff Circle. I live in the condominiums. For a historical perspective, I was one of the first people to purchase in there, which was really one of the first affordable housing in the modern boom era. And so I'm really the poster child of affordable housing. And in these hearings and stuff, we don't always hear from the people that benefited from the affordable housing. I'd like to say that I'm one of the few people that have benefited historically, being able to afford, and I count my lucky stars that I've been able to afford to live in Ridgway. I operate a small business, a landscape architect, and I'd like to make a few comments on some of the things that I see as far as this lot 3. One is a circulation. I see problems and conflicts with the overall circulation pattern, especially with respect for a common lot 4 enters onto Red Cliff Drive up there. That's very close to the newest project, entry and egress, plus the Red Cliff Circle. So in my opinion, it doesn't seem like many people that would be a strategic way to egress the property. because you're going towards the end of the property. That's going to create more conflicts on Red Cliff Drive. In the morning time, there is the children walk to catch the school bus close to the Christian Center. So that's a possible conflict. I'd like to also say, with respect to the commercial, seems like there's not much access for service. Service is going to come in the morning. The trucks either got to park on a common lot, that main thoroughfare, and block traffic, or they're pulling in the parking lot and more likely going to turn around and exit, which would be, I guess, the south side of the property. I would like to say also that the drainage with the retention pond, I don't think that's going to work there. And I can say this is more or less a floodplain where the retention pond is indicated here, where the culvert comes out. Right now, there's a trapezoidal swale that's concrete. The amount of silt that has been introduced into the Mooney ditch has been substantial. So if you include the amount of velocity coming off of that concrete, because it's got a lower roughness coefficient into that ditch, if we have a 100-year event and you're introducing this retention pond, that subsurface water is going to encroach, I think, on the buildings. There's a big building that's fairly close in the condominiums. I would like to say also that, with respect to moving where the pond is, there's right now a sewer lift station there. And to move this infrastructure, Joe is saying, well, we want to save money on infrastructure down on the east side. Well, but you're going to spend money to move all the existing lift station. That's going to put quite an impact on the condominium, plus the apartments that utilize that. I think that's could end up being an issue in the long run. I will say too, there's not people historically are crossing the highway down the sort of the corner of lot 2 there where it kicks out a little bit. And so there's not much access. People are going to be filtering through those apartments, especially from the commercial area to get through, and they cross the highway at that point. That's just the human nature. Between 2 points is a straight line. That's the way people tend to move from the apartments and from the adjacent sites. So I think some of those issues I would like to see too, which I'm not seeing, is recreation. There's absolutely zero recreation on this side of the highway. There's more kids, there's families, they're literally, for the condominiums I live at, they literally play in the street. That's a direct conflict. I think it could be resolved with the, I'm not necessarily against the ponds, because that does introduce something. We do have mating pairs of geese that come in the pond and wildlife. That gives them a place to drink. They don't have to necessarily cross the highway. But with that being said, that would be a perfect spot maybe for, say, a small park, some kind of recreational opportunities, and especially centrally located in the middle of the site. I think I'm not against the affordable housing kind of model. I think with high density and stuff, especially with the housing along the highway and the apartments, I would like to see, which of course with the development of the landscaping, having berms in between these different uses, especially between where the ditch is, the existing irrigation ditch, that essentially is a riparian habitat at this point. It's has now kind of reverted almost to a natural sort of state. And one thing I think to remember is that that pond empties into the river. And so now that we're introducing all this concrete, we're introducing hydrocarbons, more pollutants, that's going to go into the pond and goes into the river. So that's something I think that needs to be addressed on the whole, as far as getting this pond project pushed forward. I would also say too that it appears that the drainage, to kind of minimize drainage and kind of reading over the information that was supplied, rather than directing it into curb and gutter and the sewer system, it looks like it's feeding on these asphalted areas, and I think it's become quite a problem in some areas, especially on the north sides. Some of these buildings, which where the commercial is, or would be on the walks and such. That's something to sort of take into consideration in the overall scheme of things. And in kind of closing, I guess, one thing that's up in here now as far as our HOA, who is maintaining. And so it'd be interesting to see how this develops. There's been talk that the Ridgway USA was being dissolved in an HOA. So we have a lot of issues with the pond. We have beaver issues, the trees, water quality issues, obviously silting issues. These are some of the things that hopefully staff take into consideration and see the big picture of how this site is going to affect the alternate area. And I understand the Hillside lot has sold, which is kind of, I guess that would be kind of northwest or on the north side of the site. And how is this going to, there's going to be impacts from that as far as the sewer, their drainage. There's a pretty big picture on, especially the size of this site. And hopefully, we're all crazy, and like I said, I've been a bit from affordable housing, but hopefully we can make some good decisions.
Thank you for your comments. Any other public comment?
Hi, Pam Foister, 435 Terrace Drive. I apologize if I'm not looking at you because I want to look at the photo.
That's fine.
And the first time I saw this, it was on a smaller piece of paper when I looked at it on the web. And to be honest, I thought that lot 4 was a road. I thought it was a road through the development as opposed to common space. So again, I was on the steering committee for the master plan update. And conceptually, this is appropriate to what we were thinking. We always knew that, development would start to occur across the highway, in addition to the Red Cliff condos and the development that's currently in process next to the Christian Center. I don't know the name of it, I'm sorry. It's important, I think, also to remember that there is an empty lot in front of the Red Cliff condos. There's the hillside condos, and the traffic is going to continue to increase there. So I have a lot of concern about the amount of traffic that's going to be created by driving everybody around this corner to access their parking. It would make more sense to actually flip it and use the center area as an access road so that all traffic to this development stayed inside the envelope instead of adding more to the driving and the big, like you heard earlier, there's kids, bicycles, school buses, all kinds of traffic already on that road, even before this other development occurs. I agree with Mayor Clark. I don't understand why the residential is on the highway. Yes, Red Cliff condos are affordable and they are on the highway. I've been in those condos. I actually lived in one of them while I was building my house, and it's incredibly loud. You can't keep your windows open when they face the highway because of the noise. So, and as we know, our traffic is just increasing, especially to Telluride and Uray in the mornings with the commuter traffic. So I don't understand why residential is on the highway. That doesn't make sense to me. I'm concerned about 3 floors. We have the 3-story building going into the historical center of town, and there's precedent for that in our history. And there have been 3-story buildings in the center of town before. I don't understand why there's 3 stories out here. Again, if they were closer to the highway, that might be one thing. As Commissioner Nelson mentioned, maintaining the rural character that's written into our master plan. And then if the commercial was closer to the highway, that keeps it in consistency with the other lots to the south of this proposal, which are also commercial. So it keeps all the commercial in the same area. And then the other thing was as we always knew that, development would occur on the east side of the highway, we also realized that at some point, we're going to have to either create an overpass or an underpass for pedestrian traffic in this intersection. We always knew it would be inevitable. Maybe in the short term, instead of having, just one way to cross the intersection, like we heard, people take the shortest route across across the highway. Maybe we have to talk to CDOT and say, okay, do we create a position in the signal pattern where the entire intersection stops? Because we just know it's just human nature. People are going to start crossing in all sorts of places. And that highway and that intersection are just too busy now, especially with commuter traffic to Uray and Telluride. So I get the concept. We knew that area of growth was inevitable. I have concerns about commercial. I have concerns about 3 stories. Maybe taking the commercial or the buildings in lot 3 and turning them 90 degrees instead of just having like a wall of buildings. Break it up, open it up, move them around a little bit, and again, bringing all the traffic into the middle of the development envelope and keeping it off what is already and is going to continue to grow in traffic patterns around the outside. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Answer from Elizabeth and Coburn.
Okay, Elizabeth. Should we move on to Coburn? Coburn.
Hey, everyone, can you?
Oh, it's Shay.
Oh, she muted herself.
She's muted.
We let her know.
Shay, you're muted.
Is that better?
Yeah, we can hear you. Could you state your name and address for the record?
Yeah, Shay Coburn, property owner at 520 Red Cliff. So thank you guys for your thorough review, and to staff and consulting staff for a really detailed report. Appreciate you guys all spending time on our lovely little community. I'm going to try to make it fast. I think, this is a really key commercial property in our town. It's a key gateway property. Really in the middle of town. It's one of our last major infill opportunities. A lot of infill opportunities are gone, or they're very small. As a PUD and a project, the town has really a lot of ability to negotiate a lot of stuff and try to get what the community wants, what's laid out in that master plan that Pam was talking about and some others. So, we've talked about this, or I've talked about this before. There's kind of one chance to get it right. So a really cool opportunity here to develop this property well and as best as it can be. So a couple of my concerns or suggestions: the commercial should absolutely be by the highway. It's not going to get visibility. It will definitely fail if you think about other commercial that is off of the highway in town. And we don't really do neighborhood commercial in Ridgway. It's all one neighborhood. It's all commercial for the community. If you don't have that highway traffic, it doesn't work. I lived in a unit that was right there on the highway, and a truck will wake you up out of a dead sleep, and I am a good sleeper. It is very silly to put more residences right there on the highway, like most people have already said. When I look at the diagram, there's just a lot of surface parking. I feel like the use of this property is it's inefficient. There's smaller buildings, tons of surface parking. It seems like it's not a super smart development plan. It seems a little bit like how we used to develop, not how we're developing now. This is, kind of more strip mall feeling. Feels like what was platted in 1990s, and maybe because of the constrained infrastructure, but now's our opportunity to change it. If you don't change it now, it's probably never going to change. I think it's possible that commercial could be developed at a later phase. I am sensitive to knowing that there's not a huge demand for commercial at this moment, but some land could be reserved and done later. It seems just a general lack of community benefits. So other people have mentioned like parks, and Pam talked about the highway crossing. That is critical. We have lots of people jaywalking there all the time, and with more and more residents over there, something awful is going to happen, and it'd be really good to prevent that and try to address that. My neighbors might hit me for saying this, but I actually think we have an opportunity for making this a lot more dense and a lot more of kind of a little town center development, less surface parking, less dead space in between the buildings that isn't really usable for anything, more usable open spaces like those parks or gathering spaces or places for drainage, things like that. The affordable housing deal really needs to be sorted. As we all know, that's one of our major issues in the city, in the town of Ridgway, and the market won't fill that demand, no way, no how. That's not going to happen way past that. So just generally, I think we know better as a town than to do a development quite like this. I think there's a lot of room for improvement in those items mentioned. Use our land efficiently, try to really do infill in a way that will preserve our ag space, our open space that surrounds the town. Provide workforce housing, find a really good solution to get as much workforce housing as we can in there, and just really create community and a sense of place and a gateway for Ridgway. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jack. Is Elizabeth back? I'm gonna close the public, what?
You're still muted.
Who? Elizabeth is muted also? Elizabeth, you're muted? I'm gonna close public comment.
Are you there? She's unmuted. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I am sorry, I've had trouble navigating. I really like the comments of the last speaker. I think high density housing and commercial is absolutely not conducive to keeping Ridgway a rural community. And again, I would say that adding the number of units you're talking about also would add 800 cars to the community and the surroundings every day, all day long. And I also would be, I think, whoever the powers that be are, they should look into the priority right of this person's water. I think I appreciate you trying to conserve as much water as you can, and I think more information needs to be available as far as the water, the developer's water right is concerned. And also was wondering, I know we're not supposed to add questions, ask questions, leave comments, but this appears to be a destination shopping center. And I just think that the project is out of line with the nature of this community. Did you hear me?
Thank you, Elizabeth.
We have a hand from Dana Ivers.
Okay, Dina.
Yes, I had a phone call, so I missed a lot of the presentation, but I just want to, I can't believe that they're asking for more density. I'm sorry. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. And I just am going to put 2 cents worth in on solar. If this project is approved in any way, shape, or form, you need to require solar for this project. It's a huge project and it needs solar. And that's all I can say right now because I didn't listen to the entire presentation, but higher density, I don't understand where these people are coming from. They need to wake up to what's going on in the world. And in our small community, higher density is not going to help global warming, climate change, pollution, our water issues, our drought issues. I mean, please, greed is something that we don't need right now in our community. population overpopulation we don't need, and we don't need somebody trying to play monopoly with red hotels on a piece of property. We need to be sensitive to the earth right now. We need to be sensitive to the earth and what we're doing to it. This is, I don't know. That's all I can say. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Is there anyone else on Zoom? That wants to-
Let's see.
I'm closing public
Elizabeth
comment.
put her hand up again, but she already remarked, so her main remarks.
Yeah.
You're
Closing.
calling-
What?
Sorry.
Is that Bill?
No, it's Doug.
No,
I'm closing public comment. Back to the commissioners. I will summarize what I heard as a place to go from. First, actually, I have a question for the applicant. And I also thought that this, mistakenly thought that this common space was a road because it has the arrows. So the road then is up in the green area with the arrows, correct?
The commons, the road. And it's just the way you describe it in the plat. This is a.
Oh, so that is a road.
That is a road. and
Okay.
There's a lot more things to answer when we're ready.
Okay, and is that, are any of these all have arrows pointing to the north?
I see the main, as you're coming in from Hunter Parkway, this would be the main traffic flow through the property. There's a lot of parking in the center here. And you have a choice of turning down this in the back and exiting here, or exiting out here for, just call it a quicker exit, not going through more parking to get over to this intersection. And this was all these circulation points were original.
Yeah, no, that helps me. The arrows made me think it was one way.
No, I'm sorry. This is very preliminary.
So you can come in the middle, the first entrance, and you can either stay on that main area or you can drop down into what's now the residential.
Yeah, and I believe, I worked with CDOT quite a bit over the last 20 years here in town. I believe that we scaled this down here compared to what was drawn originally, much wider. And if we looked out of a line, I couldn't understand how it was approved originally. Because when you have a cross street coming in like this, they have to align.
Uh-huh.
But without getting technical, a whole bunch of questions that I can answer if this is the time.
No, that's good. Thank you. And for those at home that didn't see the finger pointing, that main area through the middle that's in yellow is a traffic way. And then there's also up above in the green area and down below in the blue area. Those are all traffic ways and they're not necessarily one way. Are they all wide enough to handle two-way traffic?
Yes. And this is a 40-foot wide entrance here, and it narrows down to 30 in this area. And then 30 all the way out here, toward the back. And it actually is a good circulation pattern. And we isolate off this parking for these apartments here. And part of what set this circulation up in the parking was the original design. And with easements through here that exist with existing utilities. So with all due respect to everybody's opinion, there's a whole bunch here that I think we can develop the concept further to really be workable. You know, the comments about access through here, as we all know, there's a common walkway, 6 foot wide walk that comes all the way down through here. There's accesses through here. This is an access. Other access that will come across here. Another one will come across here. And so it's through fares. Now, one of the things about the building sizes being spread out like this has a lot to do with the maximum building size in town. which has been, up to 30,000 square feet. Well, that would take a lot of green space. And I always feel like when you put trees and green space in between buildings, it kind of mitigates the scale of things. So I don't believe this is a strip mall look, and our 3D models that we're developing will show that.
Well, and I heard people being concerned about residential on the highway, but I'm seeing that even if you moved the commercial, there's still a residential component of that. And I don't see commercial being 2 or 3 stories tall. And so unless you were to change the makeup of this project, I don't see how you could not have some residential on the highway.
I believe that is the outcome, will be the outcome. And this is scaled down substantially from what is approved. Okay, and our coverage, we have a lot more green space. It's highly unusual to have 55% of 9 acres green space, which is, near 5 acres of green space. And the animals can get through here, they do it all the time. And especially when you have 30-foot distances between the buildings. This whole area, all the way around here, will be public available green space, park setting, and water, no problem. A couple of small water features with a recirculating system will, that was a really good comment. As far as drainage, to answer your question, the whole sheet flow of this runs right down to here.
So I have a process question. This is Shay. Since the applicant's getting to respond to all public comments, do we get another time to talk?
Sure. As we mentioned earlier, this is TJ. It's public comment is closed. It's now the planning commission's deliberation. And you may direct questions to the applicant or staff for clarifying items that or concerns that were brought up through public comment.
The commission can.
Yes, so the discussion should be more directed from planning commission and whatnot. So, and I would request that the applicant and others respond specifically to the request as when asked. Great, thanks.
So at the moment, no, we're going to hear from the planning commission and then we'll see where that goes. Planning commission on Zoom.
Yeah, this is John Clark again. I just, Michelle, you just said something about the residential that you said that even if they move the commercial to the highway side, there would still be residential on top, but it would still be impacted by the highway. That's true, but that would be a much smaller percentage of residential. I still am opposed to having the major portion of residential along the highway, and we've heard several public comments that agree with that. I'd also just like to say, as somebody whose name is actually on that 1990 plat, because I was chair of the Planning Commission 32 years ago when this came through, that was a much different time. And we know so much more now than we did then about this kind of thing. And Ridgway was much different then than it is now. There was much more clamoring for development and growth in those days. And, the applicant has said a couple of times that, they haven't, the right, how do they put it? The right factors haven't come along for this lot to develop. That doesn't necessarily play, the whole reality of Ridgway has changed so much over time that there's a lot of different factors for why this lot hasn't developed. And there probably are factors we don't even know about why it hasn't developed in terms of negotiations behind the scene with the landowner and potential developers. In fact, I know that there've been a numerous, over the years, signs would go up saying, coming soon, major retail shopping center. and it would never happen. So I just think what we have to focus on is that this, what the applicant appears to be doing here, in my view, is taking a plat that's 32 years old and kind of haphazardly redesigning it without starting over, which is what I would like to see them do, and what I actually thought they were going to do when we talked about it a couple of months ago. They initially came in and thought they could just develop it without a lot of detailed review because it was an existing PUD, and we said, no, if you want to change the components of it, you need to go back to the starting point, which is where we're at now. But they basically kept the original plat, which I just don't understand. As Shay said, there's way too much parking, there's way too much blacktop. It's not a development that fits Ridgway of 2022 instead of 1990. So the more we talk about this, the more I hear the applicant respond to questions, actually the more concerned I am that this just isn't something that I can support. So I'll leave it at that.
John, even if the commercial was moved to the highway, that's not, you have many more concerns than that.
Well, that would help. But I don't know why they're staying with the same parking lot layout that was on the original plat. I really don't quite understand that. It's sketch plan. So as I think Joe has said a couple of times, he thinks that there's plenty of room for them to revisit it. But this is, if we approve this, this is largely what we're going to see, even if they tweak it a little bit. And I'm just less and less comfortable with it, to tell you the truth.
Anyone else from Planning Commission? Jennifer, you have something?
Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned about the commercial being tucked back and being successful. And I think in the community, businesses coming in, I think that's really important that they can succeed. And I think that visibility from the highway is going to support that. Even with the residential on top, and I agree as well that we can mitigate, but I think it's residential on the highway. I agree is would not be ideal.
Well, and it may make sense, not only the commercial on the highway, but the affordable, less expensive housing perhaps is above the commercial. And then the condos can stand alone back in a residential area without commercial. But I don't know if that's enough of a change. I don't know what the Planning Commission wants to see change. I know John pointed out the parking areas. And
one other part though, also the commercial being further down the highway, the cohesiveness of that would make more sense as well.
And the existing building is commercial. Anyone else on the Planning Commission?
Hi, this is Thomas. I did just want to chime in and try to keep my comments really brief, but essentially I want to support and echo both what Shay and John and many of them people have been saying, which is not in support of large water features, not really want to be in support of some of the parking arrangements that do look very block-like, I guess, access across the highway is an issue. Even still, I'm still disappointed, or not, I'm still concerned about the issues for the Triangle project across the street. So let's not forget that that's going on. I also agree with the commercial should probably be more visible, but I understand the access issue. Though looking at the layout of the roads and so forth, I'm not convinced that truck drivers are going to be much happier with the access that's been provided right now in this design. I guess one thing I wouldn't mind, seeing or suggesting is that some of the, the blocks that are there get broken up maybe more with parking, and so that it's not just a large block of buildings, in a large block of parking, but instead that they're broken up into more smaller pods. Maybe that'll help mitigate some of that. And I'm sorry, I got a frog in my throat. Geez, that's where I want to leave it for now because I'm going to die here. But thank you again.
Thanks, Thomas.
Well, I have a question for you, John Clark. Are you in favor, would you be in favor of continuing this, or are you just completely not in favor of any of this and want to deny this?
Thank you, Bill.
I think, and this is the kind of thing that happens sometimes, and it's really what these hearings are for, which is for us to hear a presentation from staff, then hear the developer talk about why they think we should approve it, and then have public comment, and then talk about it amongst ourselves and deliberate, right? And I think what I've done in deliberating tonight is decide that their arguments don't wash to me. I mean, this idea that the commercial, because of where they've located it, gives better access from both sides. If you look closely at the drawing they presented, there's not good access to both sides of those commercial buildings. The roads are, the parking lot is close to the buildings on the east side, but there's no easy access to those buildings on the west side, their west side. There's the road through the center of the project, but it doesn't come very close to those buildings. And I keep looking at it. Like, I went back to the original plat that, like I said, has my signature as chair of the planning commission from 32 years ago. And I just think it's kind of embarrassing that we approved that then, but it was a whole different time in Ridgway's history. It was a whole different time in the world of planning. And it just seems like what they've done is kind of rehashed a 32-year-old PUD plat, and not really done a 21st century job of it. And no offense to you, Doug, you know how much I respect you. You were chair of the planning commission for many years after me, and I respect you 1,000%. I just think that this could be a whole lot better project. And to answer your question, Bill, the way it's presented tonight, I would vote against it. And ask them to go back and come up with a new plan and come back in for a sketch plan again.
Thanks.
Russ, where are you on that?
I'll second John's comments there.
So John, does that mean then that's more of a, as Bill was asking, that's more of a denial than a continuance with go back and come back with something new based on our comments?
Well, I guess, correct. I mean, that's the way I'm seeing it as of now. I guess I might ask staff, TJ and Preston, whether it makes more sense for us to ask the developer if they'd like to request a continuance, because it has to come from them, in order for them to come back with a tweaked design in a month or so, or what? I mean, TJ, what's your thought on that? I know we could go, and maybe it's a question for the developer, whether they're hearing that there's some serious concerns and that there's a number of us, or at least there's one of us is considering voting against it, whether they'd like to ask for a continuance to rework it, or whether they'd rather just have an up or down vote.
Let's start with TJ.
Sure. So procedurally, you do have a sketch plan in front of you. You have three options. You can approve, deny, or approve with conditions. Or I guess there's another of tabling or continuing. What we've done with this group previously on sketch plan specifically, where the conditions become too ambiguous or large, this commission has actually voted to deny sketch plans, and applicants have gone back and made quote unquote significant changes to the request based on the feedback. And that's what Leah's staff would go with prior to that coming back in. So yeah, we can take copious notes and in trying to address through that. So that is, of course, an option from the planning commission. You could deny it, and what that does is it does not kill the project per se. It talks to this design and this concept and says, go back and address some of the large concerns that we've identified this evening. That being said, if that's not as desirable, of course, you always prerogative to have that discussion and ask the applicant those specific questions as well and see where their minds are at. But I think it's clear some of the comments are somewhat significant. And I think there's some good discussion, or sorry, good direction for the applicant. So it might be good to ask where they're feeling at.
TJ, can I ask you a question? I know in the past on questions like this, one of the issues has been cost. I think I saw in the application that they put in, they paid over $1,000 just in terms of their initial application fees on this. If we deny it, do they get sent back and have to reapply and repay that fee again?
I believe the answer is yes to that. This has gone through its,
So the option would be to do continuance, but say, we want to see major changes would be the way to avoid that.
Is that right, TJ? So we could ask the developer if they'd be willing to ask for continuance to rework this, and then they wouldn't have to pay that fee again. Is that correct?
Yes,
that's correct, John.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yes, the opinion of the developer.
Hi, my name is Jack Young. I'm the co-developer with Joe and my son, Zach Young. When we first were looking at this and had commercial along the highway, I was the one who was particularly, it seemed like anywhere USA that you'd have a strip outside of town, the village core is beautiful, and we're trying to make it better, I believe, as a community. And it was something that we didn't want. It was, then add to it, we had 3 different real estate companies come and talk to us about renting offices out there. And it was something like, we didn't really think it was the right thing to do to be building commercial like the edge of town going out there, that next we'd have something like McDonald's trying to be in it or something. And it seemed like an image that looked like anywhere you'd drive into any little town where the main core was compromised because they had a strip outside of town and there's 3 more real estate offices. So it was that whole feeling that led us to putting the commercial, and the whole idea of the neighborhood commercial was, a vertical growing operation. We've been talking with a new division of Trader Joe's that has a small town division that we were talking about having a little community store in there. So I think.
Jack.
Sorry.
Jack, John Clark, can I, forgive me, but can I interrupt just for a second? Because rather than go into the weeds about who we've talked to, I just want to address your comment you just made. This is not like any other strip development. It's not strip development at all. That's something we did do right back in 1990, is we didn't let the commercial front on the highway. We didn't let there be any direct off the highway access to these businesses. They have to come in through the intersection, and the businesses face the interior of the property, not the highway side. So I would argue with you strongly that this isn't the same thing you're talking about. That the ability for people to see that there's businesses in there is one thing, but it isn't a bunch of businesses facing the highway, like you said, anywhere USA. I just want to make sure that's clear.
Okay, we all have our own opinions. So that's why we chose to put residential out there. I mean, very candidly, we would prefer to have the whole thing residential, but we've been getting feedback from the town that, we may need some commercial at some point. We would be very happy to have that all residential and more space for a park or the like. So that's just to make it clear, And lastly, Joe would know, Well, lot coverage is today 45% of what was approved before. I mean, this is a PUD that was approved once.
45% of the coverage area. There's
Yeah, it's 45%
acres
coverage.
coverage and 5 acres of green space.
So that's all I'd like to say about it. We came with a much lower density than what is approved today. Very much lower.
So what are your feelings on continuing, of requesting a continuance and making changes?
I think that the town, P and Z ought to recognize that the staff reviewed this for at least 60 days and the like, and went through lots of detail and recommended approval. And it's an interesting situation we find ourselves in, but that's my view, is that what was that 6 weeks about? If we came in to do a plat amendment originally, we're not here to argue that. We gave it up and decided to start all over with, and here we are, and staff recommended it. We'd be happy to modify what you'd come in and see for a preliminary plat application. We'd be happy to modify it, but I'm not certain that we're asking for anything that's unreasonable. The sad fact is that Doug, the architect, made all of these incredible 3D drawings, has spent hours and hours and hours computerized drawings that would really show the ability of animal migration through it. And it gives it another scale. You can see it from every perspective above. And it's really unfortunate that a video can't be run here. I mean, it is, like John says, a new day. It's too bad that can't be shown, because we feel like at a real disadvantage to have a 1D drawing up there when there's all these TJ and Preston could attest to the fact that we have given a real extensive packet recently, and it's unfortunate it can't be shown. I think that some of your feelings would be different as the board, but vote as you will. But we feel like we've really worked with the forward and backwards, and we're happy to take these comments and come back for preliminary plat and get sent away if it hasn't met what you think is realistic. But again, we would only get to preliminary plat if in fact your staff approved it again. So there's plenty of opportunity for that to be reviewed and synthesized according to the concerns that were voiced tonight. And I propose that you vote on it for us. The idea of suggesting that it's like the original plan, there's $1.5 million worth of approved infrastructure that's in the ground out there. And we're coming in trying to make a very nice environment out of a really bad design done in 1990. And everybody would agree with that, about the bad design. But I question that we're doing something wrong with trying to use $1.5 million worth of infrastructure that's in place on a completed commercial PUD, and we should just tear it all out and change it because of the reasons that were considered. There's a lot of considerations when one is using an existing PUD to produce a new one and trying to change it to make it conducive to modern uses.
Madam Chair, if I may.
I'm done.
Appreciate the remarks from the applicant. I think it's worth reiterating a request on whether or not the applicant would like to consider a continuance instead of the alternative of a potential denial. Your call.
I think we'd like to continue. We can present a few options with 3D work.
I like that option because I don't think we have the support from the commission to pass this as a sketch plan. And I think that continuance is the next best option.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the applicant's desire to continue this hearing for at least a month or whenever they're ready to resubmit.
I'll second that.
Do we need a date or can we leave it open?
Need a date. Yes, we do need a date certain.
To the next meeting, is that enough time for you guys, or would you like 2 months?
It has to be turned in way before the next meeting, so that probably leaves about 2 weeks.
Yeah, so we need 2.
Okay, so the continuance would be to the July meeting. Is that right? Is that what you guys would like? I see Doug nodding.
6, we have a second. I guess we should vote on this before we discuss it further. What?
Nothing to discuss.
Well, I'm just wondering if the applicant has the information.
That's what I was gonna ask,
Yeah,
but I
in
figured
order
we should vote on this and then ask if the applicant wants any additional direction or information.
You
TJ?
do have you do have a motion and a second on the floor. Robert's rules, if you would, say to carry that motion.
And vote on it.
Yeah.
That's what I said. Thank you. Go ahead.
We're voting. Commissioner Emerson?
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons? Aye. Liz?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer?
Aye.
Aye.
Chairperson Montague?
Aye. Thank you. So now, if there's further comment from the planning commission, or if the applicant has any questions or wants additional direction, is that appropriate? I'm looking, yes.
I don't necessarily want to belabor the conversation. You know, I think we've had a lot. We have the recordings. I think that what happens from here forward, staff will reach out to the applicant, set up a time, meet with them, discuss it, and if there are any other concerns, we can move forward from there. But I feel like at least staff has a good handle on where the direction's going, and we can move forward.
Okay. Did you have something you wanted to add? Does the applicant want to say anything else?
Just up for consideration in our minds is, do we really want commercial there at all? Does the town see commercial as a necessary use on that site map?
Again, if I may, this is a large conversation that we're having across the board. And both planning commission and the board of the council have made in for decisions on this, that commercial is a use that is absolutely, all of the commercial areas around town seem to be changing over to residential. And there's a strong fear of losing the commercial corridors, commercial lands within the town. So I think retaining commercial at a somewhat significant amount, especially along the highway corridors, is going to be an important component of this project. I'd be happy to hear if any of the commissioners would disagree with that, but
I have a question. It's still commercial if it's office space, right? So if the second floor
Yes.
was, is that commercial?
Yes.
yes.
Commissioner, anything else? Do you want to disagree with TJ?
I'd like to just say one last thing, John Clark here. I thank the applicant and their architect for working with us on this and for understanding our concerns. I understand, and I think we all understand, that you're dealing with some underlying infrastructure and easements on the ground that you've got to deal with. And I don't think any one of us, and I know I am not suggesting any of that get ripped out or tossed away. It's that there are creative ways to work within those, I think, to make this a much better project than it was 32 years ago. And I have every faith in in Doug to come up with some creative ideas. And I thank you for the opportunity, for giving us the opportunity to have you do that.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
I think the only thing we have left here we have another continuance. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
I'll
you.
introduce approval. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I'm reading this and then we're gonna vote to continue it. It's asking for approval.
Yes, that's the request.
Okay. The request is for approval of the Lake and Arnold subdivision to separate one single interest ownership into two lots, lots 16, 17, and 18, block 20, town of Ridgway, northeast half section 17, some coordinates, 377 North Laura Street, historic residential, single family residence, applicant and owner Beth Lakin.
All right, so yes, as you can kind of see in the staff report in the background there, much of the project the applicant has approved sewer plans, but has been unable to get a contractor on site to expand the sewer. I'm not going to go into all the details, but this is, we've continued this a couple times. Sewer needs to be expanded about 50 feet or so to be able to meet the standards to serve the second lot. And therefore, because it hasn't been installed, we can't approve final plat until the infrastructure is installed. And so therefore, we're requesting another continuance. The applicant is requesting another continuance to June 28th meeting. Given the fact that it's approved and she has a contractor on board and just trying to schedule it, it's a relatively simple project. We do feel that we're really hopeful that 1 month is adequate, and we'll come with a recommendation to approve next time. Yeah, that is where we're at right now.
Are we sure we don't want to give this 2 months? It seems more realistic.
I don't necessarily, the request is a month. I'd be hesitant to go too much further, and we're kind of looking to Preston for some guidance.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, thanks, DJ. It's tough when the applicant's not here to represent themselves, but good question to pose, certainly. But the request we received was to continue to the next meeting, which is the June regular.
Well, and in hindsight, we continued it every month in the winter when the work couldn't have been done anyway. So it should have been at least continued till like April back then.
Well, you heard it in the fall, November, it's continued to the April
Okay.
commission meeting.
Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Do we have
sorry,
to have,
I
we
forgot
have to have
about
public comment first?
public comment. Is there any public that would like to comment on this? Public comment is closed. Can I have a motion?
Move to approve the continuation on the Lakin property request until next month planning commission meeting.
Second.
Shall we? Okay, commissioners, Commissioner Ellison. We're
Hold
voting.
on. Sorry, it took me a second there. Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Friends. Aye. Blisk.
Aye.
Mayor Pro.
That's right.
Like Mayor Clark.
Mayor Pro Tem first, but whatever. I'm an aye. And then Russ.
You can put me down as an aye as well.
Yes, thank you. It's past my bedtime already.
Aye.
Chairperson Monty.
Aye. Now I need a motion to approve the minutes from last month, April 26th.
So moved.
Oh, yeah, you beat.
I'm faster.
You can make yours a second, Bill.
Okay.
We need to vote on that? No, all in favor?
No, we need a roll call.
Roll call, please.
Vote again. Commissioner Emelson,
Aye.
Grants,
Aye.
Lisk,
Aye.
Meyer,
Aye.
Mayor Clark,
Aye.
and Chairperson Montague.
Aye. Before I adjourn the meeting, I just want to thank everyone. I want to especially thank our Zoom participants because you couldn't be here, but you still took the time to get on this call because it was a important meeting. So thank you for being here, as well as TJ and those present, and Preston and Karen.
Madam
Yep.
Chairman.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep.
One second, she has a question.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we got
The letter.
late public comment, but it's in general.
Why don't you go
It wasn't
ahead and read it?
specific.
We're all here anyway.
Okay, I figured I should because it's in general.
Thank you.
And it came from resident Jennifer Cram. And so she says, I live in Ridgway and I'm concerned about whether Ridgway can provide water to all of the in-work and proposed housing projects. My comments do not apply to any particular in-work or proposed project, but rather to the sum of them. On the February 28th, 2022 Ridgway Water Supply Assessment Study looked at 3 scenarios for town growth. Their high growth scenario was 2% per year, or an 81% population increase from 2021 to 2050, or a population increase from 1,150 people to 2,080 people, or 930 people. I don't completely understand all the issues or items in the report, but my impression was that the conclusion was that the water supply was more or less okay, but attention and infrastructure work was needed. Some of the current in work or being considered Ridgway housing projects include Space to Create, 28 units, Yellow Brick Lane, 14 units, Liddell Stanton, 8 units.
Karen, I'm sorry to interrupt. This was in our packet. I read this.
It was not in the packet. It was a late add to Dropbox. It wasn't included in the. public.
Oh, okay. I read this. I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah, okay, Liddell Stanton, 8 units, Triangle Riverfront, 38 units, Joe Nelson, for Two Bill Ridgeway, 62 units, the Four Winds, 20 units. This is a total of 170 units. If the assumption is 4 people unit, that is 680 people, or about 2/3 of high growth rate population increase by 2050. But that increase is happening in the next couple of years, not the next 30 years. Even if the assumption is 2 people / unit, the increase is still way over the 2% year high growth rate. Is this a problem? Thanks for all your service and efforts, Jennifer. Muddle through that.
Thank you, Karen.
Yes.
Does anyone have anything else they'd like to share before we adjourn? A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Greetings from Burwell, Nebraska.
Yeah.
Have a good night. Thanks, guys,
Well done,
for
everyone.
sticking through it.
Cheers. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. So-
Good night.
Thanks for everything.